Okay, good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the Pontiac Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, September 2nd of 2023. And I would like to also introduce those who we have here in the room. At my far left is Corey Christensen, who's our senior planner. To my far left, again, on the dais is Mark Yandrick, who's our planning manager. We are going to have Vernita Duval, Commissioner Duval, joining us shortly. Michael McGinnis is also going to be joining us shortly, Commissioner McGinnis. Then we have Tim Shepard as our commissioner, who's going to be viewing from home tonight. He will not be joining us, unfortunately. But to my far right, Commissioner Sam Shepard. Next to Sam is Sue Sinclair, Commissioner Sue Sinclair. Christopher Northcross, Vice Chair, right beside me, and I'm Mona Parlov. I'm the chairperson of the Pontiac Planning Commission. So welcome. Roll call.
Henley.
Present.
Sinclair.
Present.
Northcross.
Present.
Parlov.
Present.
Shepard. McGinnis. And Duval. And as the chair indicated, if you can excuse Commissioner McGinnis from tonight's meeting, that would be great. And then the other commissioners have said that they will be coming. So.
Okay. McGinnis is also absent, or just?
I'm sorry.
Shepard.
Shepard is
Thank you.
has requested his excused absence.
Okay.
McGinnis and Duval are expected to come.
All
Thank
right,
you.
very good. Thank you for that. Any official communications?
There's no official communications this evening.
Okay, very good. Any amendments to approve on the agenda this evening?
The agenda that is published is, from staff's perspective, looks good.
Okay. Are we going to move anything around with the site plan?
Oh, good point. So with the two special exceptions this evening, staff's recommendation is actually to move those site plans after that. So for this, staff requests moving 9A after 7C.
Okay.
And then the second special exception, it'll be in chronological order, so there's no need to move around there.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. Next
Can
item.
we get a vote of the agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
A motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda as noted.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Okay. Henley,
Yes to approve.
Sinclair,
Yes to approve.
Northcross,
Yes to approve.
and Parlov.
Yes to approve.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Regarding our minutes from our meeting of August 2nd of 2023, does anyone have any changes they would like to note? Sam, any changes on our meeting minutes?
None.
Okay. Sue?
No changes.
Christopher?
No changes.
Nor any changes from myself. So I'd like to adopt the meetings as written.
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Henley,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Northcross,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Parlov.
And yes to approve. Thank you very much. Now we are ready to head into our special presentations for the evening.
Okay. So we do not have any special presentations this evening.
All right, very good. Then we're going to get right into our public hearings.
All
The
right.
first one we have this evening is ZMA 23-011. It is Michelle DeSouza of ACORP Services LLC. It's a zoning map amendment for 729 Linda Vista Drive. It's going to be R1 zoning to C3 corridor commercial. That's the request.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chair. Tonight, again, is a zoning map amendment at 729 Linda Vista. To many in the community, this is also the former Mark Twain School, just south of Perry at Joslin Road. And the site is just under 9.5 acres. So the applicant went through an informational session just to understand the request at the August 3rd meeting. Tonight is the public hearing, and then beyond tonight, it will go to first and second reading at City Council. The green area on the map right here is the site location. I just want to identify some surrounding zoning districts while I have this map up. So this is surrounded by R1 parcels. These are single-family, one-family dwelling unit parcels. Now, along Perry to the northwest, there are some R2 parcels, which are for duplexes. And then there are some C1 parcels from the Glenwood Plaza down here. And there are also some C1 and C3 parcels, which are commercial uses adjacent to the north, and then as you go northeast on Perry. This identifies the location a little bit. So Perry is right here, going diagonal, and this is Joslin. There's a traffic light here going down. Now, Joslin does not connect. It is actually blocked off any farther south from here. And this proposal is not to open this up for this purpose. So I just want to state that for anyone that is interested. This is the former Mark Twain School, and this is the site. There are single-family residential homes right here along Linda Vista, and then along Vernon down here, and I believe this is Gage Street to the south. This site has many changes in elevation. So the biggest example of this is this school is much higher, as there is a big hill in this area right here than the homes that are farther south down here. All right. Welcome. Just to orient everyone, this is the site currently from Linda Vista Drive, just as you're entering the neighborhood. This is a former school that's been vacant for some time. There are some vandalism issues and blight issues that the property owner, who is the applicant, is looking to clean up as part of this. Now, from the south along Vernon, this is the site. You can see a natural mound that's there. So while you do see the top of the school, there is some, the elevation does provide some buffering and distance, and also an elevation from the former school that was there. The applicant is proposing from R1 to C3, which is corridor commercial. It's proposed for the following reasons. Joslin is the start of a commercial corridor to the north, and light manufacturing requires a special exception permit in the C3 zoning district. So even if this were to be approved, the applicant would come back to Planning Commission for that special exception permit, which would come with a site plan and details to make sure that this was an appropriate use for the district. As I mentioned, the school has been vacant for over 10 years. The building is in poor condition, and the vandalism and trash are considerable. C3 is an unusual zoning request for this type of location, but the applicant is hoping to add jobs, provide training, and wants the use to be integrated into the neighborhood. While, and I apologize, conditions have been offered, and I will talk about that in a second. The C3 zoning district does allow for bars, hotels, and retail stores, and I will provide some information. So the R1 zoning district is very restrictive, largely for single-family dwelling units and a few other ancillary uses. And that may be the struggle that the property owners over the years have had in filling in this property without a school if there's not a demand for a school. Now, as part of your consideration, the C3 zoning district does allow a lot as a permitted use: bakeries, banks, bars and taverns, business service establishments, childcare centers, lodging, retail sales, workshop showrooms, non-toxic wholesale storage and distribution, assisted living facilities, hospitals, public transportation terminals, light manufacturing, and restaurants. In addition to that, there's a bunch of special exceptions. I'm not providing everything from table 2, but I am just trying to provide a summary of uses. But there are a few special exceptions that an applicant could apply to Planning Commission to make sure that this use was appropriate, and that's mini warehouse, automobile service, and medical centers. So the staff report came out on Friday. It was published on Friday, and at that time staff did not have any conditions of a rezoning. We did have a conversation yesterday with the applicant, and they did offer some conditions today. So their conditions that they're offering is that the following uses will be prohibited as principal uses without an applicant receiving another rezoning or conditional rezoning. This would be bakeries or confectionaries, bars, taverns, child care centers or daycare centers, funeral homes or mortuaries, hotels or inn, medical marijuana centers, personal service establishments, pet boarding facilities, restaurants, retail sales, those terminal public transportation, toxic or hazardous material storage and distribution, hospitals, veterinary hospitals or clinics, outdoor retail sales, or outdoor sidewalk or patio dining. If you look at this list, these are a lot of uses you would not want to put directly next to single-family residential homes or on a large 9-acre property. Sometimes that the scale of it might be impactful in noise and traffic and things of that nature. So I did show you the list from the previous slide, and I've taken that list and really grayed out what they've just excluded. So what I showed on that previous slide, what would be permitted aside from the use that they're permitting is banks, business service establishments, workshops, showrooms, non-toxic wholesale storage or distribution, assisted living facilities, light manufacturing, mini warehouse, and medical centers. So they've excluded hospitals, but they've not excluded medical centers, which may be a smaller, you might have some doctor's offices and get blood work and things that are a little bit more neighborhood focused. There are 10 standards of approval with the rezoning. These go with goals and policies and objectives of the master plan, compatibility with the site's, physical, geological, and hydrological environmental features. The applicant cannot receive a reasonable return on investment through the property with one or more of the uses permitted under the current zoning, compatibility with potential uses with surrounding uses, the compatibility of the city's utilities and services, the compatibility of the street system, the boundaries of the requested rezoning are reasonable, the requested zoning district is considered to be more appropriate from the city's perspective than another zoning district, and then the rezoning the land is considered to be more appropriate than amending the list of permitted or special land uses. And lastly, the requested rezoning will not create an isolated or incompatible zone. So we've worked really hard with the applicant to come up with the narrative, and their conditions really satisfy many of them. I do want to provide some of the analysis. Again, the site has been operated as a school for many years, but has been vacant for so long with blight and trash and littering the property. There has not been viable uses for here, and there's not been a developer coming in with single-family residential homes, which is the main priority of this zoning district. Again, this applicant is proposing to rezone the property to C3 corridor commercial. It's on the end of a commercial road at Joslin Road. It is adjacent to C1 properties and close to other C3 properties. The applicant has provided conditions to restrict future uses on the property with high impacts to traffic, noise, pollution that could be a detriment to the community while promoting their use and other uses that aim to complement the neighborhood. And Planning Commission has the ability during a special exception to require any landscaping or site modifications to further protect the surrounding properties above what the zoning code requires to ensure the proposed use is appropriately sited in this location. So I'm just highlighting that on Friday, what was published in the packet, planning staff recommended denial of the zoning map amendment because the permitted uses could negatively impact the neighborhood and neighboring properties long term. But after the meeting we had with the applicant, after the submitted conditions, tonight planning staff recommend approval of the zoning map amendment with the conditions supplied by the applicant that protects the neighborhood and neighboring properties. I do have some sample motions up here. The applicant is in the audience, and please let me know if you have any questions before opening it up to public hearing. Okay.
So is this not the energy charging station anymore?
It is still the energy charging station, but they're not, as part of they're not storing batteries on the site. So really this falls under light manufacturing.
And welcome, Bernita. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I know there's probably a few questions, so Bernita, do you have any other questions right now before the applicant speaks?
That was it for now. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest.
Okay, very good. Sam, did you have anything?
If the applicant were storing batteries on site, that would require a different zoning district?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Sue, did you have any questions right now? Okay. Christopher?
No questions at this time. I'll just listen to
Okay.
the public hearing.
All right, very good. Just out of curiosity, and Michael McGinnis is joining us. Thank you for coming in tonight. Mark, if there is a desire to alter the plan, let's just use landscaping as an example. Is that something that we would discuss now, or would that be on a site plan review?
Really, unless the applicant was offering conditions tonight, that would be done at the special exception standpoint. So the special exception allows that evaluation by planning commission of the applicant's request and does allow planning commission to go even above and beyond what our zoning code offers, as long as it's reasonable to the standards of approval for a special exception.
Okay. All right, thank you for that clarification. Before we have our petitioner speak, did you have any questions for this applicant right now?
They were answered at last month's informational session. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Great, thank you.
And if I may, just for our commissioner, they have offered conditions of approval. I did mention in the staff report, there's a memo from the Kelly firm on your desk if you'd like to see it further. So, thank you.
Okay, very good. If our applicant is in the audience, if you would like to approach the podium, and please state your name and address for the record.
And if you could hit the right button to turn your microphone on, that would be great.
There you go.
My name is Kathy Abad. I am the Executive Director of Ultra Community Development Corporation. My address, my personal address is 2539 Mystic Forest Drive, Sterling Heights, 48310.
Very good, thank you.
Michelle D'Souza, owner of A-Corp, 729 Linda Vista Drive.
Thank you.
I am Robert Pastorelli. I work for Michelle. I live in St. Clair Shores, and my address is 22641 Lakeland Street.
Thank you.
Good evening, Attorney Alex Ruder from the Myers & Myers Law Firm. That's out of Howell at 915 North Michigan Avenue. Mark, thanks for the recap there and for the updates, given our conversations yesterday and today. That was helpful. The only thing I wanted to point out briefly with respect to one of the slides was that it was missing the most recent condition that we had offered, or rather the most recent use that we had offered as part of our conditions. I didn't see automotive services on there. I could be mistaken as well.
Bottom right under special exception. I know it's grayed out on the screen.
Oh, there we go.
so-
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's perfect. So, yeah, I mean, we try to go above and beyond with the uses that we included within our proposed condition. We put a lot of thought into that, and part of that was, based on conversations we had with Mark and with Deja yesterday. So if there's any questions from a legal standpoint or with respect to our thought process behind those conditions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. Would anyone like to add anything else?
I do have some support from the community that I would like to have speak.
Please. Well, if that's that they'd like to speak, we'll have them come up for public comment.
I guess we wanted to continue to say, we're excited, the interest is still on, we're actively engaging with the community, and we can't wait to get started, so the earlier the better. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, I'm going to start on the far right now. Do you have any questions, Sam, for our applicant?
My questions were also answered last month.
Great, thank
I
you.
will have a comment for site plan review, though.
Okay, great, thank you. Sue?
Same thing, my questions were answered last month, and I'll have lots of questions on your site plan.
Thank you. Christopher?
Yes, I see a discrepancy here between the memo we were given from the Kelly Law Firm and the list of services that are acceptable. And it does deal with the automotive service, where in the memo I have in front of me, it says that automotive services, commercial as defined by the city's zoning ordinances, shall not be utilized. And then I'm reading the map up here, and automotive services is zoned out. Did I understand it correctly that automotive services are to be allowed on this?
So the list that's in front of you, thank you. The list that is in front of you from the Kelly firm are the list that the applicant, the uses that the applicant is saying is really prohibited without going through a conditional rezoning. So when you look at the screen up there, those that are grayed out are really from this list provided from the applicant that are really, you're really looking at those that are still in black to determine, what possible land uses could go here. Because as Planning Commission, as City Council, this is a long-term rezoning for the property, and we need to consider not just the use coming up here, but the long-term ramifications of this zoning change.
So automotive services, the conditions that we're looking at right now that are reflected on that chart and and also are in this memo, they're not going to be allowed.
That is correct.
Okay, and I thought I heard the gentleman say he was looking for them to be allowed.
No, just the opposite.
Okay.
Yep, so
Yeah,
the list
good.
that you have is what we are proposing to prohibit on the site.
You can't.
Okay, thank you, thank you. That clears up my questions.
Okay.
And
I'd like-
this is Deja Vasquez, the city attorney, who would like to clarify something.
Deja Vasquez, city attorney from the Kelly firm. So this list was actually written before the condition of automotive services was added. So automotive services, it will be prohibited. And it's not on our list because our list was written a couple hours prior to this.
It's actually number 1A on that list.
It is actually
Oh,
number
you did
one.
add it to
Yeah.
your list? Okay, it's not on mine.
Yeah, I
quick.
just heard that it was going to be allowed, and I said, So I heard incorrectly. Thank you, setting me straight. No other questions?
Very good. Vernita, do you have any questions?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
You're okay, good. Michael?
Nothing further. Look forward to hearing from resident feedback. At last month's information session, the applicant shared how at multiple times they've engaged with residents in the surrounding area. It's the neighborhood where my parents live also, so I'm eager to hear what the neighbor's perspective is as well, so we help make these decisions.
Excellent, thank you. I have no questions either, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our petitioners to just stay where you are. I'm going to open up public hearing, and just so our neighbors and residents know, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we will keep an eye on the clock here. When you bring your comments to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. And then also, once you have stated what your thoughts are, please take your seat and do not engage in conversation from the audience. Once you sit down, your comment time is over, and we will aggregate any questions you might have and ask the questions of the petitioners and get you the answers that we can obtain for you. So I'd like to open up public comment. Please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
I have a letter from a young lady who was not able to attend, if I'm permitted to read.
Can you come to the podium and
Sure. I have a letter from a young lady that we've spoken with often who was not able to attend. So she said, her name is Shannon Seymour. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm writing to express my support for the request for zoning amendment by A Corp. So they may lease the property to Alture and Sheltron to build a manufacturing facility in the city of Pontiac. It is my understanding that the City of Pontiac Planning Commission has the application request for zoning from the facility, but they have some concerns. I would like to express my sincere support for the facility. I feel the community will benefit by having more education and job opportunities. I myself am excited to see the facility create more education, training, and employment for the upcoming generations of the City of Pontiac. As a member of the community, I feel there's a desperate need for a flourishing strength in our local businesses, which will expand economic development and create a more confident, successful, and sustainable society. Additionally, the blighted property and abandoned school will be redeveloped and increase the value of the neighborhood. I would also like to express my appreciation to ACOR and Alture, for they have already proved their support to the community by providing grants to residents and hope to those who need it desperately. I have been a resident of the City of Pontiac for the last decade. I urge you to approve this request for zoning amendment from residential to allow for the facility to be built. I support ACORP and their partners' efforts to better the City of Pontiac.
Thank you very much.
Can we have a copy of that letter up here?
I can certainly get.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
evening.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Robert Bass. I'm the president of the Citizen District Council located in District 1. My address is 499 Highland, Pontiac, Michigan. And I am here this evening to support ACORP. I had the opportunity to attend the District 6 meeting and hear the presentation, and it was one of the most profound presentations that I have heard in my 40 years of service in the city. And most developers do not come to a first meeting or second meeting with the information that they brought and the due diligence that they did in the community, as well as the business venture. This endeavor, I support that letter that she just read because it states everything that I would like to state to you tonight, but it would be redundant because they do have an educational program. They've contacted all the residents in the area. They had enough residents at the meeting to secure that area was supportive of this, or they listened diligently. And when they left, and when I left at the end of the meeting after everybody was through talking. But when I left, everybody was they all enjoyed the presentation, and they felt the same way I do, that this is a viable endeavor for Pontiac to support. And I will be here throughout whatever meetings they need to attend, whatever council meetings they go before. I will be supportive of this, and I hope that y'all will pass this tonight. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else who'd like to make a comment, please? Come on up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, I'm Roberta Williams, 705 Heron Bay Court. I've been a resident of Pontiac for over 20 years. I support ACOR and their proposal for redistricting for the new business. First of all, I as a resident, I know that there are still some blighted areas. There's some beautiful areas, but, to remove that blighted property is a benefit to the entire city, to the residents who live nearby. I also do want to support local business and new jobs in our community. I've been seeing a lot of new businesses opening lately, and I think that's wonderful, and I'm always in support of new businesses in the city of Pontiac. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carlton Jones, 1323 Oakland Drive, Pontiac, Michigan. I'll say this. I was at that same meeting that Mr. Bass was at, and I was impressed to the fact that they had came before the citizens. And that right there is something we should always be promoting when developers and people who want to do anything in our city, that they should be coming before the citizens. I will say, sometimes we can get it confused as far as what is zoning changes and how does it impact our city. We're a city that's at a crossroad. Our city was set up in a way that we had neighborhood schools. That means the schools was right close to residential. And I think the reason why the planner and his staff was denying this, because that's a major impact, is how does commercial intersect with residential? And if we don't take that in consideration now before it continues to happen, it opens the door, because we got a lot of schools that's right in the middle neighborhoods. Now you can, and I think what the planner was saying is that you have to be very, very careful with that intersection. Great company could be talking about doing great things. I will say personally, I met with them a long time ago about workforce development and opportunities. They seem to be very eager, because we do have a talent development corporation or a coalition right here that works very aggressive with local people. I haven't heard a lot back from them, but I like the presentation. But I was going to say this to planners: we don't need to get caught up with the zoning, because our city is at a crossroad. We need housing. We need a lot of good housing. And when you come into a residential area and you intrude it with commercial, I'm thinking if I was there, I would be very concerned of how that commercial impacts my residential property. And this is not personal to this company. This is just us as a city. And I think Mark and the team was saying that initially. So when companies come in here, and it's not just this company, we have to be very, very, very concerned about that, because we could run our residents out of here because we let the intrusion of commercial into property they bought was residential. We have to be concerned about that. So don't take it personal. I know about this. A lot of our citizens could be jumping for joy for 1 or 2 jobs. I'm not about 1 or 2 jobs. I want to see some diversity in companies that come here because this is a very diverse community. And when we don't see that, we don't feel that, I have concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who has a thought they'd like to share? Please state your name and address.
My name is William Carrington. I stay at 185 Carr Street. I'm the past president of We Care Neighborhood Association, which is a neighborhood association that is right in that neighborhood. I had a chance for the past year and a half to actually visit the Troy office. I had a chance to actually invite Ultra into a community meeting. When you think of things at that particular site, we had a lot of failures in the last 10 years. Basically, for the last 10 years, I've been cleaning up that street, mostly by myself. At times, the city came out, but many times, I just got tired of looking at it, and I went out and cleaned that area up myself, hoping that a developer would come into that area with some job development, something that's safe for the residents as well, something that doesn't intrude. And this is that company. It's light manufacturing, but it is the future. EV units, charging stations are the future. And this gives an opportunity not only for the residents to have a job skill that can take them to the future, it gives us the chance for this particular neighborhood to be part of the future. And I wholeheartedly support this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for cleaning up.
Now he calls me.
And thank you for cleaning up. Anyone else have a thought they'd like to share? Please come on up. And if you'd state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Christian Graham. I live at 676 Linda Vista. So I live directly across the street from Mark Twain. I've been living there about 11 years, and I've seen the blight. I've also seen this nice young gentleman cleaning up the couches, the clothes, the dressers that accumulate right in that area. But I do have a few questions. I was wondering, how can we ensure that the jobs that will be created will go directly to citizens of the city? Because I do think that is at core what the point of this is to make sure that it impacts the citizens positively and also creates jobs, revenue, and to also increase property value. So that is my question to the corporation.
Thank you. We'll try and get your answer. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close public hearing. Thank you all for approaching the podium and being here tonight to support your city. It's very important. So if we can bring our petitioner back up. First of all, the question that was asked by our resident jobs for Pontiac residents. Can you speak to that for them, please?
I can.
Thank you.
As part of the Ultra Community Development Corporation, that is in our bylaws, that a percentage of the population of our workers would be from the local community and the underserved community. We also are working with local Michigan Works and the Talent Bank.
Can you get a little closer to the mic, please? Thank you.
I'm short. But we have taken great pains to specifically address not only hiring, but mentoring and training and providing wraparound services. It's at the core of what we do.
You had said there's a percentage that you try and target.
75%.
25?
75%.
Oh, better number. Thank you.
And I wanted to further that conversation. So we've already started hiring citizens of Pontiac, and I think Kathy bugs Mr. Carrington pretty regularly. If and young lady, if you're looking for a job, please, we'd love to take your resume with us. I mean, I think the situation has changed now where we need employees more than I think employees need a job, or vice versa, in terms of, and it would be, the whole purpose was to kind of make it easier for people to walk to work. And we did try to knock on each door. maybe we missed your door, but we did walk on each door the year that we bought the property to kind of see whether we could find anybody. We were hoping that we could start hiring one person to be like a site manager to kind of start taking care of the property, because we do have a lot of break-ins, and we don't have Mr. Carrington anymore, so he just calls Kathy, and then we have to hire a tow truck or whatever to get rid of, people's furniture. And the most important part is the people breaking the windows and smoking inside. And this young gentleman, with all due respect, I do understand. If I was living right, it is my intent, the next house that's on sale, I'm going to buy that house, so that, because we have a lot of team members that come from other states, for our engineering support services. And the EV market is constantly changing. I mean, it is what it is today. Tomorrow, it would be different, and we want to try to get more of that intellect and engineering. So there will be jobs. There are jobs right now, so it's a matter of, if we can get resumes, please, we can definitely look at hiring people right now.
And to speak to that, where would you like those resumes to be sent?
To me.
To you? How do they contact you? What would an email address?
We do have a jobs@ubtus.com, and I can just put that in the bylaws, or Mark, we can give it to you to distribute.
If you could just write it on the sign-in sheet, I can put it in the minutes.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Thank you.
I just have one more comment to say, and that is that when I mentioned that we provide wraparound services, we plan to bring people on board, train them, not just in EV, but also construction, plumbing, electrical. And with our partner companies, we will find people jobs. It may not be in the EV facility. Maybe that person has grown beyond that and they want to get into construction management. We have so many partners right now that are willing to work with us. So jobs is definitely at the forefront.
Wonderful. Excellent news. I know we're all needing people with skilled labor in so many locations, and we're a little short. So more people who raise their hands who are willing to pick up a hammer or whatever, we need you. Don't be shy. Okay, so what I'll do then is I will pivot to Vernita. Do you have any questions here?
No questions, but I do have a comment, and I do respect, Carlton, your perspective on commercial entering the neighborhoods. And I also think that this company has shown great strides in how much they want to be partners. The blight is one thing, and because you talk to the neighborhood, I respect that. And I think the blight is an issue for everybody in all neighborhoods. But I think that with your presence there, it will add more security, cut down on the blight, and just make it that much more, just a more receptive area to be in. And so I commend you for that, and I wish we had more people coming into our neighborhoods with that model. And I think it would just take away from some of the stigma. Thank you.
Thank you, Vernita. Michael, anything?
As I shared last month, the city has had a chronic and pervasive challenge with former vacant, abandoned, and blighted school buildings. And they were built intentionally to be the heart of a neighborhood, to be the hub, the activity where all the families would send their children, where community meetings are held, where seasonal festivals, playground activities. And it has been striking at the heart of so many of our neighborhoods in our city to have these hulking, deteriorating, and magnets for dumping, for crime, for just decay. And I'm grateful for the applicant's interest in charting a healthier course for the neighborhood for this nearly, I believe it's 10-acre site, if I recall from last month's review. 10 acres is a big deal, and in the heart of a neighborhood, that's a really big deal as well. I'd have greater pause if there wasn't already a scenario that's going to utilize other thoroughfares that allows for that pressure not being sent right into the neighborhood. I'm really grateful for the applicants offering the conditional aspects to their rezoning to make it very clear to the neighbors and also to the city about what will and will not be at this particular site. We have to be creative if we want to give this property and these sort of hearts of the neighborhood a new chance, which means a new chance for the neighborhood as a whole. I literally live across the street from a abandoned school as well, so I apologize that you've had to contend with that for so long, but I also thank you for still sticking with Pontiac and knowing that there was hope and opportunity for your neighborhood, for your street. Linda Vista is a beautiful street. The Knolls is a beautiful neighborhood, and it has a beautiful, rich history dating back to its beginnings in the 1960s as one of the first racially integrated neighborhoods in not only our city, but also in Michigan. And that's probably true for other parts of the country, too. It charts a very fascinating history and beautiful homes, and a lot of people love and care for their properties. So I'm grateful that there's now a private property owner that's willing to care for their property to the same degree that the residents nearby do. So I am very receptive to this change, in large part because of these conditions. Obviously, this is a recommendation, and there will be opportunity. If you're listening tonight or you're here with us tonight, this will be a recommendation, and then the next step, it goes to the city council, where it will have at least 2 readings. So if you don't like, or still have some reservations on whatever that recommendation, you can still raise those questions, do more research, get in touch with the applicant, and find out a little bit more. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to come out tonight, because that's how we're going to make our neighborhood stronger and make these hard decisions. Because if it was just a matter of endless children like we had in the 1950s and 1960s, well, then it'll just be a school. But that the world has changed, birth rates have changed, family sizes have changed. Yeah, all the variation in which education has changed in Michigan and America. So we do have to adapt. We do have to get creative, and I am open to this creative, adaptive reuse of what previously was zoned R1 because it was a school in a neighborhood.
Great, thank you, Michael, for that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I say something else,
Please.
just to add to that? And Michael just made me aware, or he just made me kind of think about this when he talked about festivals and how our schools used to engage the community. I remember I lived across the street from Longfellow, and I couldn't wait for summer because summer school, we had all the activities. And so my I guess my challenge to you is to offer activities, maybe once a summer, maybe something annually, to engage the community with festivals or just a health fair or whatever it is. Maybe they learn more about what it is that you do with some, I don't know, whatever engagement you find or you think of. But I think that would be a great idea.
Well, we have a perfect model.
Maybe approach.
Yes, please.
I'm a foodie. I love food. So we always engage. Everything is about food and a table and people. So if
I'll
you
be
have
there.
So if you come anywhere close to me, you're going to get food, So yes, we have every intent to engage with the community, and was the intent that, as soon as we start, actually, before demo, we were going to invite the community if they want to take anything. I'm still saying there's a beautiful grand piano, and there's other things inside that probably too heavy for people to lift out. They've broken windows, and we've gone back and boarded them. And Mr. Carrington, he'll tell us when something's broken, and then we go back and put a piece of plywood. But it would be nice when before the demo, if there's anything in of value that people want, they're more than welcome to just have it. So, and yes, we will have community events. That would be wonderful.
Thank you. And now for Sam, any questions?
No questions. I just want to say that I initially did share some of the same reservations about the compatibility of commercial use, commercial and residential land uses. However, the conditions provided and seeing the amount of community support you have from nearby families makes me feel a lot more comfortable to this project, and I think that I'm excited to see the benefit that it can bring to the community.
Thank you, Sam. Sue?
I agree with what Sam said, and I definitely appreciate the resident comments. That's why I wanted to sit up here. I wanted to represent the residents of the city of Pontiac when it came to large developments such as this and rezoning. Mr. Jones, I definitely agree with you. This is a very unique rezoning. I think one of the reasons why I'm leaning favorably towards it is the site specifically. You're kind of tucked back and you're going to leave that grassy area open. I'm just curious, how many people did you address at the CDC meeting as far as residents go?
I think it was 50 15 or 20 I counted. We had a sign-in sheet, but it disappeared. Yeah, about 25. About 25?
Okay. And of course, this is a rezoning, so I'm assuming that residents were notified per mail?
Yes, every property owner within 300 feet received a public notification for this rezoning.
Okay. I'm going to have a follow-up question later. I don't want to bog down the agenda. We've got a lot on that, but that's my comments for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Christopher?
Wow. 16 years I've been involved with the Mark Twain closing. I was one of the board members sitting on the school board when Mark Twain and some other schools were closed. And I have seen a lot of improvement, a lot of education. I've seen both the school district and the city coming together. I would hope that that would become even more of a working relationship. When we first closed it 16 years ago, I think it was 2007, we didn't have any of the tools in terms of school board members that are here in terms of zoning. I just have to say, wow, I think this school repurposing is probably a good case study that should be looked at. Best practices pulled out, and we start to work with other schools that are still vacant, and also schools that may become vacant, schools that may open, that we start to really engage. I think the bottom line of a city, I still feel the bottom line of a city, of how good a city is, relates to how well it can develop its young people. A city that can develop its young people is a great city. And I see elements of that starting to come together. Someone was talking about the fairs that used to happen at schools and that sort of thing. We can get that city, school district, charter schools, private school relationships going, where we're seamlessly looking at improving the development of our children, regardless of what the technology is, regardless of how things are changing. We'll become a super great city. So, yes, great.
Thank you, Chris. I want to say, based on the presentation that you graciously provided at our last meeting to explain what's happening on the site, and that you bought the site, thank you for that. But it sounds like there are several components that are coming together in order to make everything happen. And I certainly wish you the best of luck that all of that does take place, but I really am grateful for what you've offered for conditions for that site, because if for some reason your one aspiration doesn't work out for what you brought in front of us tonight, what's left that could be constructed on that site is going to be something that won't be intrusive to the neighborhood, as opposed to a bar being placed there or something else that most neighbors wouldn't want to live beside. So thank you for offering that to us. That's really important, as our planning director knows. So thank you for your patience with us so far, and I think we are probably ready for a vote if there are no more questions. We're going to need a motion.
And they are on the screen.
Make a motion.
Please do.
The Planning Commission recommends approval for the zoning map amendment for 729 Linda Vista Drive with the applicant's conditions.
Support? Anybody?
Support.
Excellent. Roll call, please.
Duvall.
Yes, to approve.
McGinnis.
Yes to approve.
Parlov.
Yes to approve.
Northcross.
Yes to approve.
Sinclair.
Yes to approve.
Henley.
Yes to approve.
The motion passes 6-0 and proceeds to city council.
Congratulations. Thank you, and best of luck. Okay,
Mind
now we are
switching
on to our next
presentations?
item on our agenda, another public hearing. This is ZMA 23-012, James Pappas, Fusco, Schaefer and Pappas. It's a zoning map amendment for 454 Auburn Avenue, C1, C3, and R1 to R4, which is a multifamily dwelling elevator apartment.
Give us just a moment. We're putting up the slide.
Sounds good.
Okay. So again, this is a zoning map amendment, a second application this evening. It's ZMA 23012. The applicant is Todd Burke from the Lighthouse of Michigan. The proposed use, while not, this is not a site plan tonight, is for a multi-story elevator apartment building. And there are 3 existing zoning districts in this request, C1, C3, and R3. And the request is to rezone this entire parcel to R4. The site is approximately 1.3 acres. This is the process and timeline. There was an informational session last month. Tonight is the public hearing, and then this will then proceed to City Council for first and second reading. This is the zoning map location. Auburn Avenue is the east-west street that is right here. Pike is to the north. And this is just east of Sanford and just west of MLK. But it is this location right here. There's a R3 zone properties to the south. There are a multitude of C3 properties, which are corridor commercial here. And then there's also the light pink is C1 interspersed along Auburn as well. This is a photo just providing the site. This is a vacant site, so there's not much to identify here. I'm not sure if there was ever a building, but this site has been vacant for many, many years. So the overview of this is Auburn is a mixed-use corridor between C1 and C3 with some residential zoning. The applicant is requesting this lot for a 5-story, 54-unit complex, which would come in a future site plan. There are no single-family residential zones adjacent to this parcel, and the R4 zoning district allows multifamily dwelling, but permits taller buildings with elevators, and I'll get to that in a moment. The applicant tonight has offered 3 conditions of approval with this rezoning. This is a concept layout. This concept was provided when the application was submitted. It does not account for the conditions that the applicant has provided. I may reference this in a few minutes, though, just to provide that the Auburn is right here, the building is right here, and then the parking would be on the rear. Other than the conditions, nothing about this is looking to be approved tonight. So the R4 zoning district is a multifamily dwelling elevator apartment zoning district. It largely functions like the R3 zoning district, which is multifamily, but allows for taller apartment buildings with elevators. And those are some of the rules from section 3.201. It really, anything more than 2 stories or 35 feet requires this R4 zoning district. The applicant offered 3 conditions. I want to share that with Planning Commission and the public. The number 1 is the 60 feet of frontage along the right-of-way shall include a 10 to 20 foot deep patio in front of the community room or leasing office area. This patio shall include 6 benches along a paved patio area of approximately 430 square feet. The patio area shall include 6 shade trees over the seating area. So the applicant provided this because they're proposing a 5-story building where there are not 5-story buildings around. So in exchange for that, they are providing a little bit of a public space for pedestrians walking by and a little bit of engagement for anyone even driving by as well. Number 2, a row of arborvitae shrubs shall be planted along the entire length of the east and west buffer yards, planted 4 feet on center to help screen the adjacent commercially zoned properties. There are not any landscape buffer yard requirements, but being that this is 5-story, the applicant has proposed that there would be some shrubs here just to provide a little bit of buffer from the vehicles and the activity that would be taking place there. And then the last one is in order to help buffer the Auburn Road right-of-way and adjacent multifamily properties to the south, an additional 10% over and above the required amount of landscaping shall be added to the front and rear yards. So as a talking point, for every 100 feet, you're required 3 canopy trees. So there's a slight, it's not a massive increase. It's a slight increase over this to provide some additional buffer, again, with this taller building and a little bit more intense use. So there are 10 standards of approval. We discussed this in the first application this evening. If there's any you would like to talk about, please let me know, but I'm just going to go through this. But I just wanted to provide a little analysis that, from the staff report. The site has been vacant for many years, and it's adjacent to a mix of multifamily and commercial zone districts and land uses along Auburn Avenue. The multifamily zone districts and land uses exist at various locations along the Auburn corridor between Woodward Boulevard and Opdyke Road. The applicant is offering conditions to mitigate the impacts on the surrounding properties and to make a public space in front of the building. And a potential multifamily residential building would improve the aesthetics and engagement of spaces on the Auburn Road corridor to improve vacant property. So with that, staff's recommendation with this zoning map amendment is approval with the conditions offered by the applicant based on the findings of fact in the staff report. And there are some sample motions for Planning Commission. So I'd be happy to take any questions you may have, and the applicant is in the audience.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. Vernita, do you have any questions for staff? Okay, Michael?
No, ma'am.
All right.
No
Sam?
questions.
No, Sue?
No questions.
And Chris?
I do have one question, and I'm probably premature. This would probably relate to the site plan. I know there was a conceptual site plan shown, but I don't think I saw anything about a retention system. or
Yeah, they
anything.
will need to-
I'm thinking that's a lot of area that we're covering, you know, the building itself and then the parking lot. And that, I was just saying, in the concept, I would have thought there would have been a retention system put in there. I don't know. I know the architects and everybody goes through their looking at flow and runoff and everything, but given some of the rains that we've had in the past few days. Okay, so that's something more to come? This is just concept, it doesn't rule out a retention?
It'll likely be an underground retention system.
Great, great.
And I have had conversations with the applicant in concept on this, and they can speak to it. But that we do have requirements, whether it's underground or ponding or other requirements. But we would. They are proceeding just with the rezoning tonight. Not even a concept site plan is being shown. We will address that at the site plan level. So.
Great.
Thank you.
I have no other questions then.
And I don't have any questions either, so if our petitioner could please approach the podium. You're here, right? Yes. Please state your names and addresses for the record.
Can you turn the mic on? There we go. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Steve Raffy, I'm with Fusco Schaefer and Pappas Architects. We're at 550 East 9 Mile Road, Ferndale, Michigan, 48220. I'll be brief. I think Mark's covered most of the issues. This is a brand-new project, 1.3 acres site. We're asking for R4, which does allow up to 12 stories. We would be at our current numbers about 5 stories. So we're well under the maximum, which I know would be a concern for this area where there's limited height. The current parcel is a mix of C1, C3, and R3. Lighthouse is proposing that the parcel be rezoned to R4, which would allow and help us consolidate the parcel, which right now is a mix of, kind of a mishmash of mix of uses. And this then would help to provide for a project that might help tie some of the current residential uses in the area together, and be a link along Auburn Road, including some of the conditions that we've put forth, providing some seating areas and so forth for the public to enjoy. So Lighthouse is offering further conditions beyond that, more landscaping, as Mark had reviewed. And we're basically at about 55,000 square feet total. So it's a very compact design, or consideration of putting the building up at Auburn Road would kind of treat it more of a kind of an urban treatment, but to address the right-of-way and to put all of the parking at the rear so that it would not be visible from the road. And along with some of the arborvitae and other screening that we're doing would go a long way to offering the views into the site and the use next door, which in this case there was a parking, I believe, a P1 zoning as well next door, and a C3, which is a little more intensive zoning. So it would help on both sides of the property line. We feel that this is going to contribute to and hopefully spark new growth in the area. It's affordable housing, which is in great need in the area currently, and we feel that these initial steps towards self-sustaining lifestyle for residents is a big contribution to the city and some of the residents in the city. And I would be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you for your presentation. Bernita, do you have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Michael?
None, and I'll just say to staff, I really appreciate the way in which we have the informational preliminary iterations. It allows ample opportunity to review the materials, do some research, get acclimated with the site, et cetera. And so it means that many of my questions were answered last month. And I look forward to if anyone has any perspective, especially nearby residents. But it's allowed me to share it at the monthly East Side Neighborhood Meeting, elicit feedback because it inevitably gets more attendance from residents that live in that close proximity, so that way they can have an understanding, form an opinion, know about the public hearing happening this evening, et cetera, to be able to help shape and strengthen the decision. So I just want to celebrate and thank that you have made this site choice. I'm really grateful that it's on the east side and on Auburn. Auburn Avenue has really been a story of, for the last, I would say, generation of loss, of demolition, of vacancy, of atrophy, of closure. And so I'm really hopeful that we can have a generation of addition versus subtraction. And that'll be on multiple fronts. Auburn Avenue seems to have been a multi-purpose thoroughfare, if you will. There's townhomes, Renaissance townhomes, a few blocks from here that's sort of that multi-family residential dwelling. And I imagine we'll see even more of that depending on the viability of this project. Could you help me understand what led to this particular site location? Was it property that was either partially within the lighthouse portfolio, or how you were sort of mapping out that particular target?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Todd Burke with Lighthouse. I'm the Chief Real Estate Officer. Address there is 46156 Woodward, Pontiac. Exactly. The parcel 454 Auburn is adjacent to townhomes and apartments that we own on J. Hubbard. Currently, we've owned the vacant land. I've been there just a couple years at Lighthouse. We've been part of our pipeline, our portfolio for quite a few years. It has sat vacant, and we just thought it would be a great addition to Auburn and that community as part of our portfolio there. And it was kind of a simple selection with size and everything fitting kind of what we wanted to do there. So.
And a follow-up question, approximately what era did the J. Hubbard Lane, when did they get built?
About 18 to 20 years ago.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Sam, any questions?
All my questions were answered at last month's informational session. I just want to say that I really appreciate when applicants go above the bare minimum when it comes to landscaping requirements, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Sam. Sue?
I just wanted to make note on your application for the zoning map amendment. Before you mentioned it tonight, I did not know that you owned Beacon Townhomes. So when I went to the site visit, and was able to drive around there to see what was directly behind it, it's nice to know that you own it, it's well-maintained, and obviously you're going to respect the value of that property. And I also appreciate moving the structure closer to Auburn versus the rear. And those are my only comments for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Chris?
I'll listen to the public hearing, comments from the public hearing.
Okay, very good, thank you. I actually have a question for staff. The R4 district allows the maximum height of 12 stories. So that, if this is approved with the conditions that have been provided, there still could be a 12-story building there?
Can we go through the public hearing, and I'll confirm that
Thank
maybe
you.
at the conclusion of public hearing?
Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, very good. If you gentlemen would like to stand by, I'm going to open public hearing. Everyone who would like to speak has 3 minutes to ask any questions or state your thoughts. Again, once you have stated your thoughts, please take a seat and do not engage from your seat. Once you've walked away from the microphone, please hold any thoughts until after we are done with the petition. If you have questions, we'll aggregate questions and ask them of the petitioner. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening again. My name is Robert Bass. I live at 499 Highland. I'm also president of the Citizen District Council, located in District 1. And this comes as a surprise to me tonight. However, I did meet with Mr. Burke earlier today, and we hopefully will be meeting with them again soon. But I'm surprised that District 7 knew about it, and my council person didn't make us aware of it. And there are several questions that I would have regarding the heights of the building, as well as where it's located. But they own it, and I have confidence in them doing the right thing with my communication with Mr. Burke. All of the things that they have discussed with me lends to the fact that they want to do more for the city of Pontiac as well as the residents. However, like I said, I have some issues with the height of the buildings at this point. Now, maybe when we sit down and I have more time to analyze what's happening, because I don't know. When I have time to analyze it and see where it's at and what's happening, because I'm a little lax right now. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you as well.
If Chair, and if I may just state for the record, I think this will help people in public comment. Our code is specific. It can go up to 12 stories, but Planning Commission still has, review authority as it goes to a site plan.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, Carlton Jones again, 1323 Oakland Drive, Pontiac. It's kind of ironic that these are back-to-back. I just want to say I appreciate Sue, Sam, and the rest of you commissioners understanding. And this is, I know it's very difficult, very, very difficult to separate the person from zoning. Because you can't always say, once you change zoning, who the person will acquire their property. So sometimes you got to be real careful. And I know those folks who know about those zoning requirements, once it's changed and once you open the door up to what you're changing to, you are now talking that property being changed. But at the same time, I want to say Lighthouse has been a resident here of Pontiac, and we always should be conscientious of what they're trying to do and support them. I support what Lighthouse is doing here because we need more housing. And I think that site comes into play to have additional housing. Now, it's trying to be changed from that C1, C3, R1 to additional housing requirements. So as we look at this and see how we build in our city, we'll see how we're fulfilling the needs, what we need in our city. And people here who've been here know it. I'm not downplaying the other one, but I just tell you one thing. If the people come and work here and don't want to stay here, we're not doing our best effort. Our best effort is people to come and work stay here, be taxpayers here, we can then lift our city up. We have to be very careful because we're in the process right now of redoing our master plan. So it makes it a little difficult to how we put the pieces together. But the land zoning is critical. It's critical. But I support what Lighthouse has been doing, what they're doing, and I think this right here will add to our needs, and I think it's one to be supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a thought they'd like to share? Okay, I will close public comment.
And Chair, can I just
Yes,
reiterate
please.
something for Planning Commission and the
Yes.
public? With the conditions of rezoning, yes, someone else could come in, but the conditions of rezoning, the city of Pontiac rules is that you have 2 years to begin construction. And so, while future uses should be accounted for and all that, these 3 conditions that are being offered, would stand the test of time if that construction started within 2 years. Okay. If this project would not move forward in 2 years, it would revert back to the original zoning, and a future applicant would have to come forward. So I just wanted to share that about all conditional rezonings in the city.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
That helps our audience members as well to understand that. Okay, Vernita, do you have any other questions at the moment?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Michael?
No, thank you.
Sam?
No, thank you.
Sue?
I just want to address Mr. Bass quickly. I had the same concerns you did with the 5-story building. If you put it into perspective, like we did at our informational center session, if you look at Casa del Rey, Seminole View, which is right over by Washington, 94 Murphy, those are the 3 that are coming to mind right now. 5 stories isn't as assuming as it sounds. Those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Chris?
No other questions or comments?
All right, then I don't have any questions either. I think everything has been spoken. So I need a motion from someone, please.
Motion to approve the zoning map amendment. Planning Commission recommends approval of the zoning map amendment for 454 Auburn Avenue with the applicant's conditions based on the findings of fact in the staff report.
I second.
All right, roll call, please.
Harlow.
Yes to
Harlov.
approve. Yes to approve.
North Cross.
Yes to approve.
Sinclair.
Yes to approve.
Henley.
Yes to approve.
Duval.
Yes to approve.
McGinnis.
Yes to approve.
Motion passes 6-0. And it goes on to City Council. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you for staying with us. All right, we are on to our next item on the agenda. Again, a public hearing. This is SEP 23-009, Naja Hermes S&N Motor Sales. It's a special exception for 1104 Baldwin Avenue. It's for new automobile sales.
Thank you. Give me 1 second to orient myself. All right. All right. Now I know how everything works. So tonight we're seeing a special exception case and a site plan review for outdoor retail. That's how it's classified in our zoning ordinance. Specifically, what they're requesting is vehicle sales. The zoning district is C3. And since vehicle sales are classified in the C3 district as a special exception, they're required to both get this permit and the associated site plan review approval. This gives you an idea of the location. It's along Baldwin Avenue. You can see it's between 2 residential streets. However, the street it is on, Baldwin, is a commercial corridor. This gives you an idea of the associated zoning. That star is where the site will be located. That deep red color underneath is for C3. So you can see that C3 is the norm along Baldwin, but there is some variety. North to it, that lighter pink color, that's C1, local business, which is a lighter commercial district, but it also permits auto sales as a special exception. So as you can see along the entire corridor, it's a pretty typical use. And in addition, there are currently operating vehicle sales in the area. This gives you an idea of the existing conditions. When I was doing my research, I couldn't identify exactly when the previous business closed. However, it appears to have happened in the early 2010s. Since this time, the property has sat vacant. And as you can see, there is some wear and tear to the parking area, and the grass has kind of extended and encroached upon the parking area quite a bit. And then over there, that photo on the left, I wanted to draw your attention to the condition of the approach along Baldwin Avenue, as well as the gate, which remains permanently closed thus far. However, their site plans do state that this will be an active approach. And so as one of the conditions of approval, I want to draw your attention to the quality of that approach and maybe make a condition of approval be repair and repaving of it. This gives you an idea of the site plans. I'm not going to go too in depth right now because we're just discussing the special exception permit. But the essential idea is that they're going to be reusing the site to be very similar to how it was 10 years ago. They're going to be reusing the existing building as their offices, and then they'll be repaving and improving the parking area to store their vehicles for sale. I'm not going to go over all the standards for approval. You're pretty familiar with them. I'm just going to jump into my analysis. So according to the most recent master plan, the subject site is located in a district that is intended for neighborhood commercial. While the master plan encourages neighborhood commercial to be human scale as opposed to auto-oriented, the priority is redeveloping commercial sites to provide services to the neighborhood. The proposed use of this site is in compliance with this intention. This stretch of Baldwin Avenue is mostly zoned commercial and has attracted higher intensity uses that generate larger volumes of traffic. There appears to be another used car dealership 1 block to the north and an auto mechanic directly to the south. Many of the businesses fronting along the Baldwin corridor have large parking areas and generate volumes of traffic. For this reason, the proposed use of the site is harmonious with the character of the area. The proposed use will not alter the essential character of the area, which has developed into a higher density commercial corridor. And vehicle sales lots such as this are appropriate for the location and the zoning. There does not appear to be any hazard to future uses in the area, and activating this parcel will be a substantial improvement. With that, it is our recommendation to approve with 3 conditions. The first condition is that the parking lot will be resurfaced and restriped to the city's regulations. 2, the approach off Baldwin will be redone. And 3, all the conditions of the associated site plan approval will be honored. And then I have sample motions available.
Thank you. Bernita, any questions at the moment for staff? No, thank you. Michael?
To confirm, was this the same property where we had a vacation of an alley or a rezoning of a strip?
Yep, and I meant to mention that. So yes, you've seen this applicant about 4 months ago for the vacation of the alleyway behind the property. And then in addition to that, I need to point out that currently the property is split between 2 parcels. 4. Which they will be required to combine all those parcels, which they all meet the proper zoning, they all have the same ownership, so there's no reason it'll get denied, but they have to get it combined before we can give final approval.
And on follow-up, is that able to be handled administratively? Internally, you handle the combination of the parcels?
Yeah, we work with the county on that.
Okay, very good. That's the extent of my questions at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Sam?
Yes, the condition 1, is that a simple resurfacing or is it an actual reconstruction of the damaged pavement?
Really, that should be resurfacing. While there is some, actually, it's going to be a hybrid. I think resurfacing for what you're seeing as being pavement, I think they're going to have to reconstruct where the grass is taken over. But in visiting the site, it is fully pavement. I think they're just going to have to reconstruct just several portions that have gone through disrepair. Okay. So.
And just to add to that, if they do make it to the final site plan review stage, at that point we work closely with the engineers and they will have to sign off on what the plan is.
With the city standards.
With the city standards.
Yep.
No further questions.
Thank you. Sue?
Are we hearing this for site plan approval as well?
Yes.
So it's a separate issue.
Yeah, but you can raise it now if you like.
What's being done with the rear fence? And what exists currently?
So off the top of my head, I don't know what exists currently, but as part of my report for the site plan, I'll just go there now. They're required to have a type A buffer, which does not appear to be currently provided. A type A buffer is a masonry wall at least 5 feet in height or landscaping requirements.
There currently is a fence between what is known as the alley, what was known as the alleyway, and those adjacent residential parcels.
But to come into compliance with the standards of the zoning ordinance, that's not sufficient. They will have to provide at least a 5-foot masonry wall.
Okay, with retail sales unlimited outdoor, it says for automotive sales that the rear for storing outside needs a fence or wall not less than 6 feet in height.
Sorry, repeat the question?
Okay. I'm just wondering if the rear fence or wall, whatever is being proposed or is staying, 2.514 under retail sales, subsection B. 2, storage areas. It says, any area used for storage of products for sale shall be effectively hidden from any area zoned for residential use by an obscuring fence or wall not less than 6 feet in height. Looks like there's a chain link in one area and maybe a privacy fence in another area. Is
Sure.
anything being done with that?
I don't know what's happening with the current existing fences, but they have to provide that masonry wall.
And it has to be 6.
It has to be a minimum of 6, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Christopher?
I guess my question would be the interaction with residents immediately adjacent to the property. And if there's a block club or anything in the area, what has been that interaction?
So during the right-of-way vacation, and I believe this was a planning commission, we actually had a neighbor come to the meeting and actually be very supportive of the vacation and of the business itself. So, and as part of the right-of-way vacation, they still had to get signatures from both neighbors and were able to do that in a very timely manner. So those speak to the immediate neighbors. There was, again, a public hearing notice to everyone within 300 feet for this application tonight for special exception.
Thank you. That ends my questions for right now. I'll listen during the public hearing.
Okay, very good. I don't have any questions for staff. I'm curious to hear from our petitioner. If you are here, please approach the podium. And if you would please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Nick Hermes. I live at 5245 Hardwood Drive, and I'm the owner of the lot, me and my brother right there.
Hardwood in West Bloomfield?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm familiar with that street. Very good. Is there anything you'd like to add to what was presented by our staff?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. What I'd like to do is start with Vernita. Do you have any questions for our applicant?
No, I don't. Again, I think Michael is correct in saying that having reviewed this informational section.
Having reviewed this in our informational sessions have been quite helpful.
Very good. Thank you. Michael, anything? Your microphone's on.
Thank you. This isn't contingent on this decision, but I think that nearby residents would be interested. What's your ideal time frame? When do you look to bring this former car lot back into reuse?
I'm really ready. We already did the paving. The fence exists in there already. We put the tarp in the back against the fence. It's a blue one, and it'll look nice in the front. It's already been painted. It's ready, really. Nothing wrong with it.
And do I recall that you have existing businesses previously in Pontiac?
No, sir.
Or this is your first venture?
This is my first in Pontiac. I was in Detroit. I sold my business in Detroit, and we live in West Bloomfield, so we came to Pontiac here.
Okay. And what would be the name of the business?
S&M Motor Sale.
S&M Motor Sales. What would be the days of the week and hours of the day operation, so that way?
It's going to be like 6 days a week, Sunday off, and it's going to be maybe 9 to 7 o'clock at night.
Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes my questions.
Thank you. Sam, any questions?
You said that you already did the repaving of the lot?
We did, and we sealed it. half of it in the back is like hard mildew. It's already mildew. It's cleaned, and the fence is right back there.
Do you have pictures of the?
I didn't. I'm sorry.
No more questions.
It's real clean, to be honest with you.
Could you
We
please
pay-
approach
we-
the podium so our audience members can hear what you're saying? And please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Steve Hermes. I'm Nick's Hermes' brother. The building and the parking lot is in super condition and it looks so good. And I like the work that we did.
Very good. All right. Any other questions, Sam?
No further questions until site plan review.
Thank you. Sue, any questions?
I will wait till site plan review.
Okay, very good. Christopher?
I'll listen for the public hearing.
Okay, great. Just a quick question. You've owned the building for how long now?
For about a year and a half, we've been waiting, me and my brother, to open up.
Okay, great. Okay, that's the only question I had for the moment. So what I'm going to do is if you can just step back from the podium for a minute, don't sit down just yet. We're going to open up this to public comment. And if anyone has a question or comment they'd like to make, please approach the podium. You've got 3 minutes to state your thoughts, if anyone does.
Carlton Jones, 1323. I want to just say this. I missed part of it, but I appreciate the question that Commissioner Sue was asking, because a lot of times when we do have barriers that come between commercial and residential, they don't look from the residential side of what does it look like. So it really needs to be conscientious. What does it look like from the residential side? They might do something on their side, but and I know that may be in site plan review, but those are the type of things we got to make sure that happens, that it's a nice, pleasant view on the other side looking at whatever it is they're trying to block off. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone else who'd like to make a comment? All right, I will close public comment. Thank you for that, Carlton. Bernita, anything?
I'm fine.
Good. Michael?
Not at this time.
Okay. Sam?
Not at this time.
Sue?
Not at this time.
All right, and Chris?
I was by there just today, and I think I saw your building. I was looking at my list here, and I was looking at your building. I said, "Do I have the right place?" It was that much improved. Just that comment, and no other comments.
Okay, very good. Thank you. This isn't necessarily for our petitioner, but it's more for staff. There is the blue tarp that they referenced for the fencing. Is this something we will talk about for the site plan review?
I'm not sure that staff is aware that the work has been done there, and blue tarp is obviously temporary and would not be permitted long-term. So we will work with the applicant, I think, outside of this meeting to address that.
Okay. And then the number of cars that could be parked on that property for sale and/or just to park it there?
The zoning ordinance doesn't have a cap on the number of vehicles that can be parked. However, they're going to be limited by the number of spaces available in their site plan.
Okay. All right. All right, I don't have any other questions at the moment, so would someone like to?
And could
If I
I
may-
just add one point of order for whoever's making the motion? If you're, we may need to amend the site plan. If the requirement that the applicant needs to provide a 6-foot stone wall, we can do that at the site plan. That's what the zoning plan requires. But if you think that anything is above and beyond what is required to protect the neighbors, or the special exception standards, then that would be addressed here at the special exception, so.
So it doesn't necessarily carry over to site plan?
If you want to exceed the minimum requirement, this would be the appropriate place for you to make that as your condition.
Okay.
If you're good with the zoning ordinance's requirement of a 6-foot masonry wall, then you do not need to make that a condition.
Okay. All right. Is everyone, well, I guess we'll just see what happens when the motion is presented. Does anybody want to add or state the motion?
I would hope that they would have a separation similar to that blue tarp as high as that blue tarp, something that's permanent. Blue tarp looks great,
Well, it's not allowed.
but it's not allowed. I like the height, but
So
I'm
if
not.
you want it taller than 6 feet, then this is where
You
you
know,
need to
I
state.
didn't get out and measure it from the car, so I'm trying to say, well, however high that blue tarp is, it looks good right now. I didn't get out and measure it. How high is that tarp?
I believe it's 6 foot high, if I'm not mistaken.
It's about
Great
like,
answer.
Yeah.
about this much. I'm 5'6", it's about this much, so,
Standard 6.
so it's
Okay.
about that height, so.
Okay, I should have, I was
Just
in a
about
little
6
bit
foot,
of
yeah.
hurry and.
And it
should've
look
gotten it.
nice, really. We don't need to dig the earth and the electrical line there in the middle, then it's gonna affect that. We should leave it alone, you know, it's already fenced in and it's straight, nothing wrong with it. We painted the fence and then we put the tarp in, so it'll look nice from the back and in the front.
And we've been waiting a long time to get a permit to operate the place too. We really hurt them financially, so
We spent a lot of money there.
we did. We have 2 locations in Pontiac, one in Cesar E. Chava, and we improved both of them, and we're excited to open. And we really, like I say, we've been hurting financially, and we want to keep going.
So you have a business in Pontiac on Cesar Chavez?
We bought the property, we invest all our money when we sold the business in Detroit.
Yeah,
And we bought Cesar Chavez and Baldwin at the same time.
okay.
And we want to be in Pontiac. We
Is
don't
the
wanna
Cesar
be in-
Chavez business operating right now, or are you
Not
waiting
yet,
on the two?
because
Okay.
we're waiting for the MDOT,
Oh, okay.
and it's been taking a long time also.
If I can help with this one, the other property in Cesar Chavez has MDOT property, like right away, where the business is located, and so they need approval from MDOT to be able to open the business there. So before we go through any applications, I know there's been some delays. I haven't spoken with them on this in about probably 4 or 5 months. But these guys are focusing on the Baldwin site first.
Got you. All right,
Okay.
well, I would really want to see that 6-foot masonry wall back there.
But to confirm, that's already,
It's
that in the zone?
required from the zoning code, so you can do it at the site plan level.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Then I think we're ready for a motion.
Mona,
Yes.
I have a question, Mark.
Sure.
Regarding the existing 6-foot chain link fence that's in the front with the razor wire on top. I know you said that you painted it. Is that the 6-foot chain link fence that's in front that you painted?
No, in the back. Oh, yeah, all around.
I think they painted it all.
Okay.
All in the back and in the front and the side, and then we put the tarp only in the back.
Including the razor wire, is that still there?
There is on the top of the fence?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we did paint the razor wire also there.
It was just a little bit. Just one line. In the back, there is no razor wire,
No razor wire, but I think
just the fence.
the E shape, like.
So the front 3 sides, the U in the front, all have the razor wire on the top?
Yes.
And this is something, as I'm taking your thought and turning to staff, is this something that we can request be removed?
Yes, but at this point. So as
Now.
part, yes, as part of this
part of this
approval,
motion.
it should be one of your conditions.
All right, well, I would really love to see the razor wire disappear.
and a follow-up question to that, is the razor wire absolutely necessary for you to be able to open and operate as a business?
No.
Okay. I have a motion for you, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Go next slide.
I move, I make a motion to approve SCP 23009 to allow for outdoor retail at 1104 Baldwin with the 4 following conditions. 1, the parking lot will be resurfaced and restriped to the city's regulations. 2, the approach off Baldwin will be redone. 3, all the conditions of the associated site plan approval will be honored. And 4, the Razor Cyclone, wire atop the chain link fence will be removed from the entire perimeter of the site.
And I will move it tomorrow myself.
Wear gloves.
Thank you for your
Support.
All right, roll call, please. We had Sue Sinclair supporting, by the way.
Can I get a mic, Henley,
Yes to approve.
Northcross,
Yes to approve.
McGinnis,
Yes to approve.
Sinclair,
Yes to approve.
Harlov,
Yes to approve.
and Duval.
Yes to approve.
Motion passes 6-0 on the special exception. The site plan is next.
All right. We are going to now discuss, this is not a public hearing, but rather, this is SPR 22-036. It is the preliminary site plan for 1104 Baldwin Avenue for new automobile sales.
All right, so same applicant, same standard information at the beginning, but this time our conversation is focused on the actual site plan itself. So there were a few non-compliance issues with the zoning ordinance that I wanted to highlight in my staff report. But first, I wanted to identify that there are certain aspects of the site that are grandfathered in. One of those is the chain link fence around the perimeter of the site. Under the current zoning ordinance, something like that would not be allowed, but it has been grandfathered in. And there's a few other conditions like that. However, any changes to the site that are necessary in order for the site to be used for automotive services, they have to come into compliance with those requirements. And so that's what I'm highlighting today with my report. So the first non-compliance issue is section 2.514C, vehicle sales lots. All areas subject to vehicular use must be paved with durable dust-free surfacing and with appropriate bumper guards where needed. The parking area will need to be resurfaced to meet this requirement. It sounds like the applicant has already done this, and we will be working with the applicant to verify this moving forward. The second is parking requirements, 4.305 striping requirements. The ordinance requires parking lots to be striped in white or yellow paint. The site plan should be revised to indicate this requirement will be complied with. In terms of landscaping and buffering, there are buffer requirements. Commercial uses of this type are required to maintain a type A buffer when adjacent to residential. The plans indicate a 6-foot chain link fence exists on the rear property line, but this does not meet the requirements of a type A buffer. So they will need to provide a 6-foot masonry wall. Next, 4.406B, parking lots adjacent to residentially zoned or used land. The zoning ordinance requires a 10-foot landscape buffer where adjacent to residential. The Planning Commission has the authority to waive this requirement, and in the past, I recommended that they do so. However, in this case, there seems to be ample room to provide that 10-foot landscape buffer. So those are the zoning compliance issues I identified in my report. There are 4 issues that need to be rectified moving forward. And then in terms of standards for approval, these are the subjective standards of approval in regards to circulation. The site would appear to be sufficient for traffic and pedestrian circulation. The existing building would not appear to present any adverse impacts on adjacent properties. There are no existing natural features on site in need of preservation or buffering. The plan should be revised to provide a masonry wall no less than 6 feet in height. And the following information needs to be added to the site plans before staff can verify compliance with the zoning ordinance: the color of the parking lot striping. And then in addition to that, there are changes that need to be made. A 6-foot masonry wall must be added wherever the property is adjacent to residences or residential zones, and a 10-foot landscape buffer is required where adjacent to residential. So with that, staff has a recommendation for approval with 5 conditions. The first is that the nonconformities identified in the staff report will not be altered, extended, or enlarged in any way. This is the standard condition we apply when there are nonconformities, and it's just to make sure that the applicant understands if those nonconformities are altered in any way, they lose their grandfathered status, and they must comply with the zoning ordinance. 2, a type A buffer shall be provided where adjacent to residential per Article 4, Chapter 4. 3, the parking area must be resurfaced to be durable and dust-free. 4, a 10-foot landscape buffer will be placed where adjacent to residentially zoned properties. And 5, the applicant will need to provide or comply with any conditions of the approval for the associated special exception permit.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Nita, for staff?
I'm good, thank you.
Michael?
None, thank you.
Sam?
None for staff.
Okay, thank you. Sue? Okay, Chris?
No questions.
All right, very good. And the only question I had, there's a beautiful yellow dumpster that's sitting in the driveway at the property as of today.
Okay.
It's not enclosed in any way. It's actually in the drive that's on what would be the southeast corner.
Sorry,
down,
here?
right there. Yep.
Okay.
It's just sitting outside of the chain link fence. So will there be a dumpster enclosure for this property as well?
So no dumpster enclosure is identified on the site plans, and therefore they are not allowed to have a dumpster placed there. They would have to, if they were going to have a dumpster, it has to be where it's identified in the site plans.
Yeah, and we could work with, they would need to have a dumpster enclosure, and there's certain rules with that. It would need to be in a side yard, but we would have to work with the applicant on that.
Okay, very good. There's also some car parts that are leaning against the fence that will also be addressed.
Yes, they will.
Thank you. All right, for our petitioner, do you have any other information you would like to add to what was just shared about your preliminary site plan? No? Everything that we shared was, okay, very good. Then, because this is not a public hearing, any last questions for Nita? Michael?
When should, will this require further action from the Planning Commission, or is final site plan from staff?
Final site plan is handled by staff.
Okay, thank you.
Sam?
Just looking at the site plan, I don't see any storm structures in the actual paved area. Is that correct?
Nothing.
Nothing? And you're not proposing any storm structures?
No, sir.
How are you handling storm runoff from this?
Well, it's already, the ground is like this. So some of it stays in the back on the grass or on the hard floor, and some goes in the street or on the side.
Okay.
And if I could just provide an update on that, engineering has reviewed this at the preliminary site plan level and find it satisfactory. There will need to be a little bit more review at the final site plan level for that.
How's that, Sam?
Yes, no further questions.
All right, thank you. Sue, anything?
One quick question. So the only entrance to this is off of Baldwin?
No, there is also
On
an.
Baldwin
I'm sorry.
and on Fairmont Street.
So is your intent only to use the entrance off of Baldwin?
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
And the side is when I get delivery in. Yes, ma'am.
Chris, any questions?
No questions.
And I am all set as well. So I need a motion, please.
There it goes. I make a motion to approve the site plans for SPR 23-017 with the following conditions. The nonconformities identified in the staff report will not be altered, extended, or enlarged. 2, a type A buffer will be provided where adjacent to residential. 3, the parking area must be resurfaced to be durable and dust-free. A 10-foot landscape buffer will be placed where adjacent to residential, and the applicant will need to provide or comply with any conditions of the approval for the associated special exception permit.
Thank you. Any support? Support. Thank you. A roll call, please.
Commissioner Henley,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Northcross,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner McGinnis,
Yes to approve.
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes to approve.
and Commissioner Parlov.
Yes to approve. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you for choosing Pontiac for your next round of entrepreneurial ventures, and we wish you the best of luck and success. Please engage with your neighbors in your community to be an active part of what we hope will be a continually improving Baldwin commercial corridor. And thank you again for investing in Pontiac and working to clean up what had been a neglected and abandoned vacant property.
Thank you, sir.
Well said, Mike. Thank you. All right, our next item is our last public hearing for the evening. This is SEP 23-010, Hadareen Image One Contracting. It's a special exception for 900 Joslin Avenue. It's the conversion of the old credit union to gas station / automotive services.
All right, so very similar to the last request you heard, this is a special exception in the district that they're proposing it in, and therefore it has to come to you for special exception approval and also have to get site plan approval as well. So under the ordinance, it's considered automotive services, but specifically what they're requesting is a gas station. This gives you an idea of where it's going to be located. It's across from GM along Jocelyn Boulevard. You can see it's adjacent to many residences to the rear. This gives you an idea of the zoning in the area. Across the street, heavy industrial. That dark gray is heavy industrial, that light gray is light industrial. That's several employees, which will then be able to be serviced by the gas station at this location. To the north, you can see these purple and red properties, which are commercial zones. And then the blue to the south is parking. This gives you an idea of the existing conditions. The site does not appear like most gas stations appear. That's because it used to be a credit union. The applicant is proposing to reuse the structure, keep much of the architecture, but they would be adding pumps to the front. These are the proposed site plans, which indicate the existing structure on site and where they're planning to place the 4 pumps here. They will also be providing parking at this location and to the rear. There is a drive-through at the rear of the property where that used to service the credit union customers. That will be not utilized, but it will be remaining. The applicant has not proposed to remove it. These are the 4 standards of approval, which you are familiar with, and I'll run through staff's recommendation on each. According to the most recent master plan, the subject site is located in a district that is intended for mixed use. While the applicant is not intending to use the property for multiple purposes, their proposal to activate an unused parcel meets the master plan's goals for redevelopment, and the entire area will remain mixed in its use. This stretch of Jocelyn Avenue is mostly zoned commercial and has attracted higher intensity uses that generate larger volumes of traffic. The proposed use suits the character of the area in this regard. There are several residential properties that back up to the rear of the subject parcel. The applicant will need to revise their plans to provide for a type B buffer between the commercial activity on site and the residential use of the neighboring parcels. Again, the proposed use will not alter the essential character of the area, and automotive service facilities such as this are classified as a high pollutant producing land use, and as a consequence, they must provide a water pretreatment plan to protect the city's waterways and adjacent properties from contamination. With that, staff has a recommendation for approval with 5 conditions. Number 1, required stormwater pretreatment plan shall be approved by the city of Pontiac. Specifically, that will go to the city engineer. 2, the proposed access drive off Jocelyn will be relocated to meet the setback requirements of the ordinance, and 2 additional access drives will be removed. I'll come back and explain that one in a minute. That has more to do with the site plan, but it's critical, and so we want it to be a condition of both. 3, all the conditions of the associated site plan approval are honored. 4, the proposed access drive off Jocelyn will be, that's a repeat. And 5, the site will be appropriately screened from adjacent residences with a 5-foot or taller masonry wall. So the issue with the access drive that I want to draw your attention to is here. The existing site has 4 access drives, 2 to the north, 2 to the south. The applicant in their site plans is proposing an access drive off Jocelyn right here, which is well within 100 feet from the corner. Our zoning ordinance requires that there be a 100-foot setback from either corner. And in addition to this, when we ran it by the engineer, they confirmed that it is a safety violation. And so for that reason, we want it required that they move this access drive to be at least 100 feet from either corner. And in addition to this, their plan already calls for the removal of this access drive, but we would also like this one removed, as these 2 are non-conforming and within 100 feet of the corner. If they meet these conditions, that will leave them with 1 major access off Jocelyn and 2 to the rear, to the north and the south. 3 in total instead of 4. Yep, and so that's it.
Very
With that, here are your sample motions.
Thank you. Any questions for Nita for staff? No. Michael? No, ma'am. Sam?
No questions.
Sue?
No questions.
And Christopher?
This is considered a hazardous material site?
Yes.
No further questions. I'll listen for the public hearing.
But to clarify, you mean it will become a hazardous materials? There isn't anything currently known?
Right, it's not a brownfield. but they are going to be introducing elements that could make it a brownfield. For that reason, they had to provide certain plans to the city. One of those is a hazardous materials mitigation plan.
Anything else? Anything else, Christopher?
No further questions.
Okay, thank you. One quick question. There is along the east property line, wooden slats in the chain link fence. Is that something that is grandfathered in, or can that be addressed?
That is not grandfathered in, as this type or this use specifically is required to provide that type B buffer. And for that reason, the chain link fence and the slabs are not grandfathered, will have to be removed, and they will have to come into compliance.
Okay. And the type B buffer again is?
Give me 1 second to look it up.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Because it looked like there was a thought of a masonry fence that could be 5 feet or taller.
All right, so a type B buffer, they have two options. Option 1 is a 5-foot masonry wall, at least 4 feet 6 inches in height to 6 feet in height. Option 2 is no wall, but a 20-foot landscape buffer, 2 deciduous trees per 100 feet, 8 evergreen trees per 100 feet, and 12 shrubs per 100 feet. Due to the layout of the site, option 2 is not an option for them. They will have to go with the masonry wall.
Okay. And it can be anywhere from basically 5 to 6 feet.
4.5 to 6 feet.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the clarification. All right, if our petitioner is here, if you would like to approach the podium, please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Haider Badruddin from 26286 Simone Street in Dearborn Heights. I am the applicant for this project.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like to add to the staff's presentation?
Just looking at it like this, I know it's kind of unconventional looking at a bank becoming a gas station, but we do this type of thing all the time, and once it materializes and becomes, it's actually a very nice site. You know, so we'll try to keep the front of the building, the existing, as close to what's existing as possible. The only addition will be we're not adding any square footage to the building. It's plenty of space. We're only adding the 4 pumps and a gas canopy in the front. So if you could visualize that, it makes it look like a gas station, and it will become a gas station. So a gas station is a convenience for the neighborhood and for, you know, drivers. So that's what we're looking to do, just to add some convenience. And with your help, we will do that.
Do you have a vendor for your gas yet? Have you decided on anyone yet?
Actually, I'm a developer, and the person, well, we work hand in hand. We are developing, we will be in there. We will be the ones that are in there.
Okay. Is it going to be like a Sunoco?
It's going to be a brand, yes.
A brand, okay,
Yes.
very good. Vernita, do you have any questions? No? Michael?
Have you developed other sites in the city of Pontiac?
Not in the city of Pontiac, no.
Okay. Others in Oakland County?
No.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember.
What's your target time frame? What are you hoping to have be fully operational?
Well, fully operational depends on the approvals, so it's a project of anywhere from 3 to 9 months, depending on material these days. So yeah, as soon as we get approvals, we're ready to move on this.
Thank you. And I just want to share for the community, there are banks on top of banks in this corridor, and you might ask why. Well, think about tens of thousands of General Motors employees all cashing a physical check on the same day. It's why, you know, I'm a member of Genesis Credit Union. They have what was TNC, Truck and Coach Federal Credit Union. They just have so many bank teller windows and so many drive-through windows because that was the nature of banking and that was the nature of payroll. But that has changed. So many people do online banking. So many people have different ways. There's just an elimination and a downsizing of bank branches, credit union branches of their physical locations. So we've seen adaptive reuse even on this street, of the former Community National Bank branch, which then I think became National City, and then who knows what it has been or was, but now is a union hall. on this street. And there are other uses where former bank branches are being reused. So this is one that I haven't seen before, but I salute the adaptive reuse of the building versus, let's just throw it away, because it's a solid building. It's not, it's not a deteriorated structure. And so I'm glad that it will have a new lease on life. And thank you for pursuing Pontiac and being interested in Pontiac for one of your new ventures.
Thank you, Michael. Sam?
No further question, or I have a question for staff.
Okay.
On the agenda for tonight, it shows that there's 2 special exception permits for this site. Is the second one, that's a site plan review, correct?
Correct, that's a typo.
Okay, and then is that just a preliminary stage? Will there be another site plan review?
That is the preliminary site plan review, and the final site plan review is handled by staff.
Okay. No further questions.
Thank you. Sue?
No questions.
All right, Christopher?
I'll listen for the public comment.
All right, that sounds good. I will do the same. So if you want to just step back for a moment, we're going to open up the floor to public comment. If anyone has any comments they would like to make, please approach the podium. Please state your name and address for the record. And comments are 3 minutes, all right.
Carlton Jones, 1323 Oakland Drive, Pontiac. I guess I need to know, what is the special exception for this site? And I think what Mike was saying about how it's now, one time was banks, usually banking hours is over with at 5 o'clock. You're talking about this now being a facility is going to be maybe 24 hours. I don't know what the time frame will be. It could have a little different impact upon the community. And third thing I would try to find out is that I know we're making this transformation in our country from gasoline and oil to electric. Is it some plans, future plans? Can't say for sure that this site could possibly be utilized for EV charging stations. I don't know, maybe converting over in the future. But I just really know, what is the special exception for this site that makes it special? Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? All right, I will close public comment, and what I will do first is I'll turn to staff. Why the special exception?
The reason they need a special exception is because they're proposing to use the site for a gas station. So in this zoning district, no matter where, if you want to do a gas station, you are required to get a special exception permit from this body.
Thank you. All right, if our petitioner can come back to the microphone, your hours of operation are intended to be?
Those are not decided yet. Whatever the city allows, I don't think will be a 24-hour operation, though.
Okay.
Most likely it'll probably be 5 to 10 or 11.
Okay. And then do you have any plans to add any EV compatibility at your
That's
site?
actually something that we will probably be adding in the future.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. All right. Bernita, any last questions? Good, thank you. Michael?
None, thank you.
Sam?
No further questions.
Sue?
I will hold for the site plan.
All right. Christopher?
I'm really uneasy, and I think I showed my uneasiness in the question that I gave earlier about hazardous materials. That's my biggest concern, is introducing those substances into the neighborhood. We already have a gas station up the street. Don't want to limit competition, don't want to choose who's coming in and who's coming out, but I am really uneasy about that. That's my only comment.
Thank you for that. I don't necessarily have any questions for our applicant, but what I would say for a thought, Chris, is that I would have to rely on our engineers to make sure that how they're constructing what they propose to do, if they get approved, that it's going to meet EPA standards so our residents stay safe. So would anyone like to make a motion? It would work.
Give us 1 minute, please.
Sure. All right, it's moving. All right, anyone making a motion?
I make a motion to approve SCP 23010 to allow for automotive services at 900 Jocelyn, with the 5 conditions noted in the staff report.
So support with the 5 conditions. Thank you. All right, roll call?
As I displayed on the.
Yes, exactly.
Commissioner Henley,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Duval,
No, I'm sorry. Yes to approve.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner McGinnis,
Yes to approve.
Commissioner Northcross,
No.
Commissioner Parlov.
Yes to approve.
He approves also.
All right, there you go. All right, so congratulations on the first one. Our next item, please don't leave your position, is SEP 23-010. This is not a public hearing. However, this is again for Hadar. It's a preliminary site plan review for 900 Joslin Avenue. It's the conversion of the credit union to the gas station / automotive services.
All right, so there are some non-compliance issues with the zoning ordinance that I highlight in my staff report, and I will be going over those now. Similar to the previous case that we heard, there are some elements of the site that are nonconformities that are grandfathered in. However, I identify every requirement they must come into compliance with because they are introducing this new intensive use to the site. Firstly, automotive service facilities are required to maintain a type B buffer when adjacent to residential properties. I went over this earlier, but essentially their only option is going to be the 5-foot masonry wall. In terms of access management, this is really the primary concern staff has with this development is the access issue. The proposed driveway appears to be within 100 feet of the corner. As a condition of approval, staff recommends the proposed driveway off Jocelyn be moved to the center of the parcel and more than 100 feet from either corner. And in addition to this, the removal of the 2 non-conforming access drives off LeBaron and Jocelyn. Next, in terms of landscaping and buffering, the commercial uses of this type are required to maintain a type B buffer. The plans identify an existing wall and fence, neither of which meets the requirements, and so these will have to come into compliance with that masonry wall. For parking lots adjacent to residentially zoned or used land, the code requires a buffer strip with 1 tree and 1 shrub for every 10 feet of buffer strip length. The Planning Commission has the authority to approve an alternate screening requirement or waive this. Due to the fact that there isn't space on the site plan, we recommend going with just the type B buffer. In terms of low impact development standards, automobile service facilities are required to provide a spill prevention and response program, and oil water separators and hydrodynamic separators or water quality inserts for inlets or equivalent. And then in terms of hazardous substances, the applicant needs to provide a detailed plan for hazardous material management. The zoning ordinance requires automotive services provide details on their proposed spill prevention and response program, and so on. There does not appear to be anything in the application addressing the issue of hazardous materials. In terms of the subjective standards for approval, with circulation, the primary concern with circulation is those access drives. With that issue resolved, we believe circulation will be better. In terms of the building, the existing building would not appear to present any adverse impacts on adjacent properties. For natural features, there are no existing natural features on site in need of preservation or buffering. And for site layout and screening, the plan should be revised to provide a masonry wall no less than 5 feet in height, and the access drive off Jocelyn should be relocated. 5, for compliance with the zoning ordinance, I already went over these. They need to provide the color of parking lot striping, the pretreatment plan for stormwater runoff, and landscaping details. And then in terms of compliance issues, there's those 2. They need to provide that buffer when they're adjacent to residential, and they need to address the issue with access drives. And so with that, staff has a recommendation with 9 conditions, and we decided to break it up between what are standard and apply to pretty much every development, and then what are really specific to this development. So firstly, a landscaping plan shall be provided and shall be approved by the Planning Division. 2, the applicant will need to provide or comply with any conditions of the approval for the associated special exception permit. 3, all necessary local, state, and federal permits must be obtained before the certificate of occupancy is approved. This is really where we protect ourselves in terms of those hazardous materials, because they can't operate and their site plan becomes invalid if they do not secure those necessary permits. And then in terms of specific conditions, the nonconformities identified in the staff report will not be altered, extended, or enlarged. A Type B landscaping buffer will be provided where adjacent to residential. The Planning Commission waives the buffer strip requirement for parking areas adjacent to residential. A hazardous materials management plan shall be provided to the city prior to final site plan approval. The proposed access drive off Jocelyn will be relocated to be a minimum of 100 feet from either corner, and 2 of the non-conforming access drives will be removed. And lastly, the necessary pretreatment plan will be provided per the requirements of subsection 4.601 and will be approved by the city engineer. And then you have your sample motions here.
Excellent, thank you. Bernita, any questions?
No, I don't.
Okay. Sam, any questions at the moment for staff?
No questions.
All right. Sue? This is not a public hearing. This is just site plan review.
I'm a little confused because this package is not in order. Are we seeing any elevations of this facility anywhere?
It should be provided as part of the site plan, so it should be within the site plans.
Right, it's not in order
It was in
our
a separate
package.
part of the packet.
I see, I'm sorry about that. If you want, I have the page here.
Thank you. If you could come back to me.
Sure, absolutely. Chris? Any thoughts or questions for staff?
Again, I'm just uneasy about continuing to bring more and more hazardous substances into the community, where it's, where it's not absolutely necessary. That's just my concern. I mean, I know there are some safeguards. I'm not familiar with all of those safeguards. I'm not familiar with running the gas stations. I know I've been in gas stations where I've seen some spills occur and quickly mopped up and that sort of thing. But just a little uneasy about what happens as the gas station is running, and then 10, 20 years down the road as a change occurs and things have to be transitioned to something else. That's my concerns. I think the plan is novel and good, but just concerned about day-to-day operation and 20 years down the road. What do we see?
Thank you, Chris, for your thoughts. While Sue's still looking over her items, I've noticed you've got your engineering firm in Ontario. Is that accurate?
The main engineer, he's in Ontario.
Okay.
He does a lot of work here.
Does he?
Yes.
I see a 313 phone number for him.
Well,
Where are your other facilities that you've done this type of repurposing at?
we have one in Wayne, Romulus, proposing one in Taylor. Sorry.
That's okay.
Trying
Just
to remember.
curious, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
There are several, right?
Yes.
Well, good for you. And then your thoughts about the leaving the teller, the pneumatic drive-through area. Was there a reason that you wanted to leave that? Any thoughts on that?
There's really no reason, when we did these plans, that was the thought. We were
Okay.
going back and forth. We might actually propose to remove it.
Okay.
It's just, there's no need for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
What's the current clearance under that canopy?
Under the
The
existing,
ATM canopy.
it's not as high as the fuel one. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that would probably be one of that's why we're considering removing it.
Yeah.
We don't want traffic under it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I didn't, what is the clearance between those concrete
Between
bumpers
the
underneath?
drive islands?
Yeah.
It should be in the plan, I believe. I don't show the exact clearance, but it shows the length of the canopy is 43 feet. 43 feet, 6 inches, but I don't have on the existing any clearance, any distances in between.
I just have some concerns about the size of trucks that deliver the gasoline to the site and them being able to exit through that way as you have proposed on the plans. Whether they'll actually have the clearance both width-wise and height-wise to exit there.
The idea is that they will not be going underneath that canopy. They'll be going along the property line and exiting from that side approach. But that is another, that's why we're considering removing that whole structure.
There will have to be the 5-foot landscaping buffer added in on that eastern property line.
Commissioner Henley, can I ask for clarification on what the applicant just said?
Sure.
Just, can you repeat where you anticipate the gas tank that would be bringing the gas, where they'd be coming into the site and where they would be exiting the site?
Well, no, they will be entering off of Jocelyn.
Okay.
But if the concern is that they will be going underneath that canopy that's existing, there's no reason for them to go underneath that because the tanks will be in the front of the,
Yeah, and I understand nothing with the canopy, but where do you anticipate that they would be leaving the site? Would they be going onto LeBaron Street to the south, or would they be using another exit?
they'll be exiting off of Jocelyn, I believe.
So the gas, those 18-wheelers will be using the same entrance to exit and enter and exit, is that correct?
Yes, not necessarily an 18-wheeler. So we use smaller trucks, which are half the size. So we had these issues before on smaller sites, and the turning radius inside was a lot smaller. So we use a 40-foot truck.
Thank you for clarifying, and just in staff's recommendation to remove 2 of the driveways, I wanted to make sure that wasn't an issue, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'd just like to request that the fire truck and fire circulation plan be revised, because it currently does show them going through the canopy area and exiting onto East Madison Avenue.
Please make sure to have that be a condition of approval if you are approving.
May we also see this again before final approval by staff?
Not by our typical process. However, as in the past, if you would like to have final say, just make that a condition of approval.
Okay, I think that might make some of us more comfortable. Thank you. Yes. Yes, please, go ahead.
I have a question regarding the canopy in front. How tall is that?
That will be, typical clearance will be about 15 feet.
15 feet to the underside of the canopy?
Yes, with a 36-inch fascia, so 18 feet total.
And you have lighting like mounted underneath that?
Under canopy lights, yes.
Will you have anything mounted on the canopy itself?
As far as lighting, that'll be part of the imaging part, and I believe that's a different process, depending on what brand they're going to go with.
The reason I ask is the existing building is a story and a half. It's not very tall. You're adding a canopy there, and you're butting up to residential. That's a lot of light to the adjacent residences. that building, the actual building itself will not shield much at all. This is why I'm asking.
So all the lighting points downward
Mm-hmm.
in the front off of Jocelyn. There won't be anything in the back pointing towards any residential areas.
If I may just add about lighting and the whole process, really the lighting is, the photometric plan is not required till a final site plan process. There are certain lighting requirements underneath the canopy which are a little bit more stronger for safety reasons. But the applicant is required to provide photometrics to ensure that whether it's a Joslyn Avenue or residential street, that light is not bleeding off the site. And so that will be provided by the applicant. That will be reviewed by either staff with the final site plan or planning commission if you so choose to do so. The other thing is that we don't we require upward and downward directed lights. And so even if you have a wall pack, it has to be downward directed. And so the applicant's going to need to ensure that there's proper lighting for the site. And if any future lighting is required, they would need to show how that would be accommodated to meet those requirements. It is normal for gas stations to have the canopy taller than the principal structure. It's one of the few times that that is a normal thing, but typically, you know, in planning, we want the principal structure to be taller than the accessory structure. So.
And if I can add, just speaking to the photometric, the requirements in the zoning ordinance when adjacent to residential, they are not permitted to be more than 0.5 foot candles at the property line. So they have to provide a photometric plan showing that they are not exceeding that 0.5 foot candles. Elsewhere in the property, they cannot exceed 10 foot candles, and along a street, they are not allowed to exceed 1 foot candle.
Who is measuring this?
So a lot of engineering firms or, you know, contractors will actually work with lighting firms that specialize in this. And, you know, in my history as a planner, you know, a lot of times they are accurate, but we've, you know, when something looks brighter than what the photometric plan says, that's when we would measure if necessary. We're not going around measuring all the time, but we want to ensure that what is being proposed is followed up on the plans.
And that enforcement will be handled by code enforcement. So if it was observed that the lighting was excessive, or if there was a complaint, that would be handled by code enforcement.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Chris, did you have anything else?
No further comments.
No? Okay. I just noticed on this plan, I'm not sure which one, it says modified site plan, but it says up in the corner, gas station hours, 24 hours.
That's not that's not going to be 24-hour site.
Okay. All right, I don't have any other questions. I think my engineering support staff here has addressed many things that make me feel more comfortable that the questions have been asked. So if no one has any other questions, we're ready for a motion, which I would love it if we could include that this final site plan review comes back to us.
Absolutely. I make a motion to approve the site plans for SPR 23-016 with the 9 conditions identified in the staff report based on the findings of fact stated in the staff report, with the additional 2 conditions of 1, revising the site circulation plan, and 2, that the final site plans come before Planning Commission for final approval.
Is there something else we were supposed to reference with the fire? Is that all set?
I think that was handled with the first
Okay.
additional, right?
Just making sure we captured everything.
Support.
Thank you. Roll call?
I got it. Duval,
Yes to approve.
Parlov,
Yes to approve.
North Cross,
No.
Sinclair,
Yes to approve.
and Henley.
Yes to approve.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you.
What's that?
Sue.
Okay, thanks.
All right, our next item, if we can power through, is everybody okay if we still move on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Our next item is an informational session. It's SPR 23-021, Lore Group, preliminary site plan at 951 Vanguard Drive. It's a new industrial automobile service facility.
All right, please give me 1 minute as we get the PowerPoint set up.
Yes, of course.
We'll take a break on that note.
Okay, so this is SPR 23-021. The address is 951 Vanguard. The applicant is the Umlor Group. The proposed use is a new industrial automobile service facility, and the zoning district is unique. It's a mixed-use district. So just as an overview, the applicant is proposing to construct a new light industrial facility to conduct repair work on the tractor unit of semis. The new facility will be 39,600 square feet. Parking will be provided on the north and east side of the building. The proposed development will be located in the Clinton Valley Center premises, which is a mixed-use district. This mixed-use district has an established development plan in which this applicant will have to come into compliance. So due to being located in that district, they have to meet certain requirements, and that will be reviewed by staff. In addition to this, a development agreement will need to be provided, or a revised development agreement will need to be provided and approved by City Council. So this is just an information session. As a reminder, this is an opportunity for the Planning Commission to understand the proposal, to provide feedback to the applicant, to ask questions, or for the applicant to ask questions of the Planning Commission. And then the applicant will have until September 21st to resubmit plans for review for the October 11th meeting, where the case will be heard for a decision. This gives you an idea of the location. It is to the southeast of Vanguard Drive. This gives you an idea of the zoning district. We put the star there. It's a very large mixed-use district that incorporates the neighborhood to the south and many industrial and commercial sites. But roughly where the star is located is where in this giant parcel it will be located. These are the renderings. You can see it is a typical industrial building in design. They are proposing, it looks like, some masonry and a base along the perimeter, some architectural details there. But one thing we did want to point out is that the western facade, which will be visible from Vanguard Drive, has no architectural elements or details. Something we might like to see in the future is something proposed from the applicant, perhaps windows or something to break up that wall. These are the proposed site plans, which show where the site will be located relative to Vanguard Drive. The development will be relatively in the middle of the parcel. Parking will be to the north and east, and then truck traffic will be circulating around the building. As an analysis, the site is properly zoned as an MUD, which permits industrial sites such as this. Within the entire district, they just cannot exceed a certain percentage that is industrial. Approval of this will not hinder that at all. They are respecting the newly adopted residential buffer to the south. A few months back, this body altered the requirements for mixed-use districts, and one of those was an increase in the buffer to residential. This applicant is honoring that. And Vanguard is designed for higher intensity commercial uses such as this. It will be able to handle the truck traffic. There are some zoning compliance concerns identified in my staff report. One, information identified as missing should be provided. Two, a development agreement will need to be reviewed and approved by City Council. Three, it is unclear from the elevations provided what the percentage of facade will be transparent. The ordinance requires 40% transparency on front facades. The applicant should revise the plans to provide this or apply for a variance. Three, bicycle parking does not appear to be provided. Lots larger than 25 spaces are required to provide at least one bicycle space per 20 parking spaces. Continued, there are three accessible spaces are required. One must be van accessible. Automobile service facilities are required to provide a spill prevention and response program. Oh, sorry, ignore that. And lastly, the applicant is required to obtain the necessary permits and or licenses from the appropriate federal, state, or local authorities. And then with that, staff's recommendation is that the above items be addressed along with any feedback from the Planning Commission, and for site plans to be resubmitted by Thursday, September 21st, to be considered for the October 11th Planning Commission meeting.
So thank you, Corey. I want to just explain a couple things for Commission and the applicant. This is J&J Industrial Contracting, if that's the right term. They're at 1185 North Perry. They're outgrowing their site. These guys do work on industrial vehicles, particularly the electrical circuiting of industrial vehicles. And so they're currently going through a variance process through our ZBA because they're with outside storage and things that they need to address there. But they're looking to expand, and this is taking the former the site of where the former Rise development, the Planning Commission approved the final site plan earlier this year. And so they, have gone forward, met with us in a pre-application meeting, and submitted a plan here. This does address some of the new MUD standards from earlier this year. And I think in general, there's a few minor things Corey brought up, but staff is supportive of this request so far. So thank you.
Okay, so Bernita, any questions? Okay, Sam,
No questions at this time.
thank you. Sue?
No questions at this time.
Thank you. And Christopher?
No questions at this time.
All right, I don't have any questions either, so it sounds like it's just kind of be aware, we've got this coming back around.
Well, I would encourage the applicant to come up and, see if
Well,
there's anything they want to.
I love that suggestion as our
address to
applicant
you.
here. We're ready to just get this, I know, how about that? You're like, phew, that was an easy one.
Can you
Could
put
you
your
turn your
microphone on, please?
on?
The right button.
The little person.
How's
Thank you.
that?
Your name and address, please.
Brian Biskiner, 100 West Drive, Wixom, Michigan, the Umler Group. And I don't have much to add to that. I'm here to answer any questions you have. I'll say that to Mark's point, that they're very minor. We don't have any problem with the issues that were brought up in the review, and we'll make those changes by the 21st to resubmit to see you again.
Very wonderful, thank you. Anticipation of breaking ground, being operational, if everything went perfectly?
If everything went perfectly, which it probably won't, they could actually do some work before the weather broke this year. But certainly, we're looking at an early spring groundbreaking type of timetable. But if everything went great, sometimes you can get some work done. There's some cuts and fills and things like that they could get to work on.
Okay. Are you going to have to move much dirt?
There's a decent, not really. There's a decent slope on the site, so there'll be a little bit of balancing to get it flat-ish. And so that would be something they could work on. They would need to get that to get ready for the pad.
Okay. Great, well, I won't hog the microphone. Bernita, questions?
I do have a question. You're expanding your facility. Does that also mean you're expanding employment opportunities?
The owners could speak to that, but I think they're preparing for that, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for the owners because we've got some questions about that as well.
Would you like to answer questions now?
Oh, they're here, great.
Thank you.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Josh Holdsworth, 1185 North Perry.
Thank you, Josh, for staying with us.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Vernita.
Yeah, I'm so happy, again, that you're staying with us as well. Just my question to your representative here, you're expanding physically, are you expanding with manpower as well?
That is correct, yes.
How are you expecting to grow to? What size?
Currently, we are at about 65 employees. We don't have an exact number that we would like to grow to, but currently we are hiring. We're looking to grow probably another 10% before the end of the year.
Okay.
That's 65, that's a nice business.
Yeah.
How long have you been with us now?
We occupied the building in 2020. Purchased the building in 2018 and occupied it in 2020.
Wow, that's great.
And are your employees required to have any special technical abilities?
We employ licensed journeyman electricians, and then the other trades that we do not have state licenses, but it is still a skilled trade that's based off experience.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you, Bernita. Sam?
Yeah, could you confirm the extent of the masonry wall? It's a little unclear on this drawing. It looks like it extends the entire perimeter. Is it just for?
Is there a masonry wall?
What's the question?
How far where are the extents of the 8-foot masonry wall?
It's not related to the building. You're talking about on the south side of the site, right?
Yeah, is it just on the south side?
Yeah, that masonry wall is to screen outdoor storage. There's an area along the back there, 30 feet wide by 340 feet, that will have a screen masonry wall for any outdoor storage.
Okay, so it's a U shape on.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And
And
then-
at this scale, it looks like curb.
And then this question is for staff. If the landscaping plans are showing that a majority of the parcel is going to be open space, if these plans were approved, would they be held to that, meaning they couldn't expand anymore? That's just.
One of the things with this site, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is I think there's a 150-foot buffer to the Stonegate neighbors to the south. And so I think they're utilizing this space. I don't know if you have any additional area on east or west to expand, but I know that they're utilizing this space as much as they can here.
And to expand off that, if in the future they wanted to expand, they would have to come back to this body and get that approval.
Yeah.
Currently, the masonry wall that we just talked about on the south side, is 216 feet from the south property line, and there's a very large berm along that was probably put in during the original development of the road, the parcels. And so, besides coming back to the planning commission, we could certainly expand to the south, because we haven't exceeded our 150, and then the berm also, there's Mark would be able to speak to it better, but the berm in conjunction with the setback would be under consideration. But right now, this is what we're proposing.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Sam. Sue?
So the masonry wall that you were just talking about backs up to Stonegate, correct?
To the south,
Right.
yeah.
So I'm looking at your preliminary landscape plan, and what are the lines to the left of that storage area that it looks like you're putting that masonry wall around?
So the long north-south lines to the left
Yes.
of the masonry wall,
Yes.
those are for semi-tractor trailer parking.
Okay.
Understand that berm we just talked about is much taller than that masonry wall and likely taller than those trucks.
Right.
It's
I
20
remember the
Yeah, it's
FedEx
20
facility.
It's quite a large berm.
So that's just parking back there, basically the trailers? And who's your target customer? FedEx, DTE?
Our target customers are tier one automotive suppliers. Magna, ZF, Gestamp, and
Okay.
the such.
Great, thank you, Sue. Chris?
Thank you for choosing Pontiac. That is my questions.
That's it? Okay. I think we were just saying this, the outdoor storage, which is marked on the plan here, that's where you're gonna do your tractor trailers just to stage there? On the south side of the property?
Those, and Josh, you correct me if I'm wrong, Josh had me put those there to the left of the outdoor storage, just so they had a place to park just the trailer,
Okay,
and while the tractor was being worked on or whatever, but to get them out of the way of the flow of the site, just a
Gotcha.
dedicated area to park the trailer.
okay. And that is something that's fine for zoning for outdoor storage temporarily there?
You know, it's a little different when you're working on vehicles than actually having a permanent storage. I know we talked about this at last month's planning commission meeting, but in my understanding is this is not a permanent storage that would be considered outside storage.
It's more like
And they're
rotation.
screening what would be the outside storage, you know, by the masonry wall,
Okay,
so.
makes sense. I will study this more for when we see you again in October. It's not that far away. But this is exciting. I'm so glad that you're here with us and you're staying with us and you're growing and you need more space. Just as an aside, what's happening with the talks with the automotives and the UAW, will that have an impact on your business too? Depending on how they decide?
There's potential, but hopefully not.
Okay, let's hope not, for sure. All right, I don't have any other questions. So if everyone's all set, can we let our good friends go, and we'll see you in a month.
All right, thank you
for
very
bringing
much.
your information tonight. This is exciting.
It is.
All right, our next item that we're going to discuss, another informational session, which is SPR 23-020, McNeil Automotive. It's a preliminary site plan for 520 Columbia. It's an expansion of automobile service site, which is building and parking.
All right, so this is an existing operation in the city at 520 Columbia. They sit on a parcel that is zone C3. They are looking to expand, almost, I think, more than doubling the size of their structure. And they're going to be expanding onto a C1 zoned parcel. For that reason, they are required to get a special exception permit and site plan approval from this body. So they will be coming back next month for that special exception and that site plan. As an overview, the applicant is proposing to expand their existing McNeil Automotive. The proposed expansion is 6,715 square feet and will be added to the south of the existing structure. The applicant will need to combine parcels, and approval of this combination should be a condition of approval. Again, as discussed previously with 1104 Baldwin, those parcel combinations are handled by staff internally, but they are important to keep in mind in terms of your approvals. And then lastly, in addition to receiving a lot combination, the applicant will need to receive a special exception permit. And then this gives you an idea of the location. You can see their existing operation here at the intersection. And they're just looking to expand south to complete this corner. This gives you an idea of the zoning. As you can see, it is a commercial corridor across the street, C3 and C1, relatively common along this avenue. So a facility such as this is very typical. This gives you an idea of the proposed facade. Yep, there you go. And then this gives you an idea of the site plan. You can see where the existing parcel line is. They're going to be combining this all into one parcel. It'll be split zoned. And then their expansion will be here with some additional parking here and a retention pond here. In terms of staff's preliminary early analysis, the parcel is zone C1 while the rest of the parcel is zone C3. This can move forward with a special exception approval. The use is appropriate for the site and the expansion is adequate in size relative to other developments in the area. The applicant is attempting to meet buffer yard and stormwater requirements, and staff will provide a more thorough analysis at the October 11th meeting. There are some preliminary zoning compliance concerns that I identify in my staff report. First of all, as always, any informational items that are missing should be provided. It is unclear from the elevations provided what the percentage of facade will be transparent. For uses such as this, the requirement is 40%. All repair work must be conducted indoors and no storage is permitted outdoors. This should be a condition of approval. Where adjacent to a residential property, they must provide a type B buffer. And one van accessible space is required. So we just want to verify that the proposed access strip meets the requirements of our ordinance. Continued, automotive service facilities are required to provide, you've seen these all before. And then per the zoning ordinance, a special exception permit is required. And with that, staff's recommendation is that these items, along with others, be addressed. Any feedback from the commission be addressed, and for the applicant to resubmit their site plans by Thursday, September 21st, in order to be considered on the October 11th agenda. And that is it in terms of my staff report.
good. Thank you for that great information. Bernita, any questions at the moment?
Not at the moment.
Sam?
No questions.
Thank you. Sue?
No questions.
Thank you. Chris?
Great to see you expanding.
I was
And
gonna
great
say
to
that
see
when
that
you
you're
got
doing it here in Pontiac.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't have any immediate questions, so if you would like to come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record so we know who you are.
Which button?
It's on.
It's on?
It's red.
Okay,
Yep, you're
great.
good.
Will McNeil, 146 Beach Street, owner of McNeil Automotive.
Very good.
I
Thank
have
you.
my architect here, Tim.
Good evening. Timothy Brodowski, 2024 Chestnut Circle, Lake Orion, Michigan.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Is there anything else you would like to share with us about your exciting expansion
I
potential?
am so super excited.
Oh, great.
Born, raised, educated. I'm here. I'm going to continue to be here. 23 years, and I'm ready to grow. I have my manager here, his lovely girl, so we're all excited, waiting on you guys.
No pressure.
Yes.
Oh, that's exciting. Bernita?
I echo Chris' sentiments of welcome and thank you for wanting to stay. I think there's something in the expansion water because we're definitely getting a lot of testaments to how important it is to stick and stay. And I'm just so glad that you decided to do that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernita. Sam, anything you'd like to add?
No, just excited to see you stay here and grow.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue.
Same thing. Good to see you're expanding.
Thank you, thank you.
Chris?
Again, thank you for being in Pontiac and expanding.
Thank you. And how lucky that you have a vacant lot right next to you.
Yes.
Was that forethought on your part when you bought that site?
Yeah, for the most part. I always wanted to do it,
Uh-huh.
and Miles was pushing me, and
This is Miles' fault.
yeah. So yes, I'm really excited. I am. I'm not gonna lie. Every day I talk about it, he pushed back. We tug and pull all day long, but it's a team effort.
And he's not gotten fired yet, so apparently,
Yeah.
it's a good tug.
Yes.
Great. For some of the things that staff has gone over, does that all sound doable to you? Any concerns you've got?
Sounds doable.
Okay. Go right ahead, please.
I have a few questions on the report. The comment about transparency on the front-facing facade, so I'm assuming it's the facade along Joslin, and the 40% requirement for transparency. I saw this letter just earlier this week, so just kind of dissecting some of it and going through it. If we pursue a variance for, let me back up before I ask that. How is that 40% calculated? Am I looking at the overall, height and length of that wall, and 40% of that surface area needs to be transparent?
Yes.
Okay.
The first floor.
It would be the new build, not on the existing building.
Right. The existing building would be grandfathered.
That's a lot of transparency on a wall that yes, on the front side is masonry, is whatever it is. On the opposite side is tools and stuff, things that I don't believe that we could comply with that. So in the event that we did pursue a variance for that, is that something that could be added to and then discussed at the October 11th hearing? Or how does that play in the process, I guess?
So the ZBA is a different board, and I would encourage you to apply as soon as possible. It's a little late for this month's meeting, but we could work it out with this commission here if you were applying for a variance.
Maybe some sort of a conditional approval, something of that nature.
It should not, if you applied for a variance of this, I don't think it affects the site plan, I don't think it overall. So we could put a condition on a preliminary site plan, and then depending on the variance decision, settle that with your final site plan, which is normally staff approved, so.
Perfect. And then the buffer B along residential, we have residential that backs up to both the existing site, if you would, or the current facility is, as well as the planned addition to the south, where along, Fourth Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. Is buffer B required at both, or let's call it the entire new length of the property? Or are we just designated to the south new portion adjacent to the addition.
So let me just recap your question, make sure I'm understanding correctly. Are you asking if it's just where the building is being built or the entire length of the southern parcel that you're expanding on?
My question, I guess, would be, does it need to go the entire length of the, what will be ultimately the combined property from Fourth to Columbia, all up, whatever direction, that west side of the property?
Generally, it is the land use itself. So, I don't know that it needs to go all the way down to the right-of-way line because of clear distance and stuff like that.
Sure.
But it should go down close enough to keep that clear distance.
But you're talking about this portion here, whether or not.
Absolutely.
Yep,
And the portion to the south, I don't think there's any issues or any implications to install that buffer,
Yeah.
but to the north, I don't know how we
No,
would.
you're not required on the north because that's an existing property. I had shared, so I have actually met with the applicant back in January, February, and I have to say that I'm happy to clarify these questions. You guys have done a great job on these plans, moving them forward. So,
Awesome.
Yep.
That is all I had then. Then yeah, I'm imagining the buffer B would be the masonry option. Again, I don't believe that landscape would fit in that area, but we could double check.
And that's entirely up to you which option you go with.
Totally understand. That's all I've got.
Oh, good. Okay. All right, if no one has anything else, I think we can let you go home and have dinner. Thank you. Right, we'll see you in a month. Thank you for staying with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, we're getting close to the end here.
Yeah.
Isn't this? I know. Huh? All right, now we are going to talk about where's this little page here? Let's go. Let's go, go, go.
I think we've gone to the end of it.
This is not a 5-minute discussion.
That's okay, let's go. The next thing we're doing, Mark is going to share with us the zoning text amendment. It's informational only. It is citywide, it's a new overlay district, and it's regarding residential infill overlay district.
Okay.
Take it away, Mark.
Good evening. So this is informational session. There's no, and this is a city-initiated text amendment, so there's no decisions tonight. However, I am providing a lot of details here. I'm going to be going a little bit more in depth than I will at the public hearing. So this is an opportunity to get feedback, to get comfortable with this. And we are still finalizing the draft ordinance are in your packet. We're still going to be making some tweaks. I think there's some things to clean up in there, but this is an opportunity to present to Planning Commission. So this is the schedule. So tonight is the informational session. I am speaking about this on the 11th and 27th of the two districts that this overlay district is proposed for. And then there'll be a public hearing next month in October before it goes to City Council. I just wanted to share that is being proposed in District 1 and District 7. So let's start out about this, and I'll get into what this is. So the 2014 master plan, while the city is looking to a new master plan very shortly, the 2014 master plan is still something that the city can rely on as it looks to look at policy. And a city is comprised of and defined by its neighborhoods. Strengthening the existing neighborhoods through blight removal, demolition, reinvestment, and business support will improve the image of the city and, more importantly, the quality of life for all Pontiac residents. And it also says there the existing zoning ordinance should be amended to provide greater flexibility for building type and land uses within these districts. These standards should emphasize building form and outline acceptable materials and standards for each district. And this is about residential development. So the city has been approached by a developer who has the option with the county, not the city, the county, to purchase and build on these county-owned properties in 2 of the 3 proposed districts. The city has reviewed the concept and is proposing 3 areas of an optional overlay district where a property owner of a one-family district, not necessarily this developer, it's open to everyone, a property owner could do any one of the following on each of a buildable parcel. One is to build a smaller single-family dwelling unit with higher architectural standards. Two, build a two-family dwelling unit with higher architectural standards, even though the base zoning district might be R1, which is single-family. And three, construct an accessory dwelling unit, also known as a granny flat, a mother-in-law suite. There's about 10 other names for that on their property, and that would be specifically for these three districts. So I wanted to identify the districts real quickly. So City Hall is right here. This is Woodward and the railroad. MLK is on the eastern side of this map, and the M1 concourse is right here. Now, Unity Park has been developed over the last, 5, 6 years, maybe longer, as the county owned a lot of properties, and they started working with Habitat for Humanity, Lighthouse, and other CHN to develop and reconfigure some of these homes there for their clientele. These areas are near it, and we looked at some of the demographics of why it is important for these three neighborhoods in the city. So those really were the proximity to downtown and Woodward Avenue, the cluster of vacant lots, many owned by the city and county. So you're looking at neighborhoods that are underpopulated because of these vacancies. And then we looked at household income. We looked at the average property value. I mean, they were 10 to 30% below the Pontiac average, not the county average, the Pontiac average. So, this is where a neighborhood strategy makes sense. Now, I'm not going to list off everything here, but there are 145 vacant properties. It says homes. It's vacant properties in Pros Area 1, which is just to the east of City Hall. There are 97 down on the neighborhood to the west of M1, and there are approximately 140 vacant properties that are buildable in between Osmond and South Boulevard, Woodward, and MLK. So, and these are some of the demographics that really could use some neighborhood enhancements. Let's start out with some of the rules. Now, this is not in your packet tonight by air, but we are proposing a couple definitions with building setback. I wanted to bring up modulation. I don't know if Planning Commission or the public has heard about this. This is an inset or projection or sections of a structure's facade within specific intervals of a building with width and depth as a means of breaking up the structure's apparent bulk. So you're not having just, even if you have windows, something to break up the massing of a wall and to provide a different detail, whether it's an angle, an inset, an offset, things like that. And then we are also defining what an accessory dwelling unit is. This is not something that is permitted currently in the city of Pontiac. It is something that a lot of communities, big and small, nationwide, are really assessing as an affordability option and a culture option. As there are some families from multiple cultures that like to have multi-generations with living on the same property. So let's talk about some of the regulations. I'm going to start out with the single-family and two-family complexes. The regulations are very similar, so there's not many differences between them. But the current minimum in the R1 zoning district is 1,200 square feet. The proposal is 700 square feet. There is a requirement that the orientation of the houses be side by side, front to back. For interior lots, the primary building entrance shall be located in the front facade parallel to the street. And then corner lots, there are certain requirements there having to do with the dwelling units. The primary entrances should have one of the following 4 items: either a projecting or recessed entrance, a stoop or enclosed or covered porch, provided that an enclosed porch shall comply with the required setbacks, transom or side light window panels framing the door opening. And if you don't know what a transom window panel is, that's the window above a door. Architectural trim framing the door opening. So it's giving an architectural enhancement to that front door. And I mentioned about the two-family dwellings. These homes should be consistent in height, bulk, and scale with surrounding single-family residential uses, even though some of their requirements may be different. And there's also, staff is proposing a limitation on the use of vinyl. It's still permitted, but in exchange for these smaller, this overlay district is optional. You can still build a 1,200 square foot home under our current regulations, but if you want this option, you're required some higher architectural materials. We don't specify every material, but it's, it is something that staff would review. This is not something, if this ordinance was approved, would be going to Planning Commission, so unless a variance was needed. So an additional thing is the following design elements are required: facade modulation, entry features that are dominant elements facing the street, and the utilization of a variety of high-quality materials that are new to the neighborhood and/or complemented to the surrounding neighborhood. Furthermore, to those design elements, the applicant shall choose two of the following: architectural articulation in walls and roofs, a covered entry porch, a second-story step-back or modulation, and larger area windows used as architectural features compared to other structures in the neighborhood on the front and side facades of the principal structure. The use of windows, and large windows sometimes, on a facade can be used to enhance the architecture of a building. Now, this was provided by the potential developer. This is something that could be seen, and this is a single family. It's a two-story, but it's a single family residence, and it is just above the 700 square foot requirement. So, moving on to accessory dwelling units, currently not permitted. The proposal would be that it would be at least 400 square feet. I believe we have a maximum as well as 1,000 square feet, and a certain percentage. It would not be, I think it's more than 60% of what the principal structure is. We don't want an accessory dwelling unit to take over, in mass what the principal unit is. It can be attached or detached from the principal structure. The owner must live in either the principal or the accessory structure. I think it's on a future slide, that will actually be deeded on the property. And whichever property is rented must be in our city's rental inspection program. I'm aware back home in Pennsylvania, people that have done this kind of situation of someone living in a garage, and even at some point the property owner moved to the garage. And so there's opportunities for the property owner to switch that very seamlessly with the city, but the property owner must live there. So this is not a duplex where you've got a landlord and two units. The property owner is vested with the property and must live on the facility. The ADU is subject to the following setback and height requirements. Really, it should meet what's in the R1 district. The rear yard setback for an ADU may be reduced to 10 feet from the rear yard if the height of the structure does not exceed 12 feet. But an accessory dwelling unit can be up to 20 feet. And then the accessory dwelling unit should not increase the size of the principal structure. So if a property owner wanted to build a taller attached accessory dwelling unit, they would need to make some modifications to that principal structure. As I mentioned, the accessory dwelling unit should not exceed 60% of the gross floor area of the primary dwelling unit. And the accessory dwelling unit may not take up more than 35% of the total lot coverage of the rear and side yards. So it would still require that this is not a completely built-out property, that there still would be either grass or other uses on that property for the rear and side yards. I mentioned the deed restrictions that would be required. And so really these city-initiated zoning text amendments is for what's called a residential infill overlay district, and we're considering this a neighborhood strategy. In staff's assessment, the strategy is focused on the needs of these neighborhoods, and other areas of the city may have different strategies in the future. We did evaluate some other areas as potentials for this, and we did not think that the demographics and the timing and would work as well, but that's not to say that we're not considering those for either this or something else in the future. Again, this proposal is designed for anyone to build, not specifically for one developer. And there will be some contrasting architectural styles that are proposed, but the long-term goals of this strategy are to create placemaking with enhanced architectural requirements. If you have one of these in a neighborhood, it may stand out as a little weird, but if you start having 10 of them, 15 of them, it might actually start creating a sense of place and placemaking as to where you're at in the city. The second point, and I think this is the key thing, is this is an attempt to stabilize and or elevate existing property values in these neighborhoods. We don't want them to drop further from the blight and the vacancy and anything related to that crime, vandalism that exists. And so really this is meant as a neighborhood strategy to help the existing neighborhoods out. The only other thing I wanted to mention, we do have some height requirements. We do not have, I do not currently have architectural requirements for the accessory dwelling units like we have for the smaller units. But if, Planning Commission wants to consider something, we'd be happy to entertain that. So I believe that's it. Thank you. Yep.
Do you want us to ask you questions?
Absolutely.
All right.
Hit me with
Renita.
your best shot.
Go for it.
I'll wait till we get more information and move forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, is this applicable to every single lot within those overlay districts, or are there any minimum parcel sizes where this will be effective?
That's a great question, and I can make that as part of this. So these are areas, they are mostly R1, but the property has to be zoned R1. So that's the first rule. It has to be a buildable lot. So really our code says that it needs to be, our minimum lot size is 60 feet. However, there is a clause that if it's at least 40 and half of the residential properties within 500 feet are that width, you're able to build on it. So for some of these neighborhoods, 40 feet would be the sufficient size. I know particularly for 1 and 3, 40 feet would be sufficient. So.
No
Yep.
more questions.
Thank you. Sue, go ahead.
As far as the vinyl, I kind of like that, where you're limiting the vinyl. I've seen some of the tiny homes in Detroit, and they're done very well. I'd like to see the OSB siding added to it as well. Curious, your minimum square footage was how much on the principal dwelling?
So the minimum for principal buildings is 1,200 square feet right now.
No.
The proposal for both 1 and 2 family would be 700 if you invoke the overlay district.
Okay. I just need to study it further. I didn't get an agenda package emailed to me.
I'll look into that if that's my fault.
Okay, maybe it ended up in my spam. I did have some email problems, but,
I would check your spam. I do believe I sent it to what I thought was your email. I
Okay.
may have the wrong email.
all right, thank you.
Maybe we'll send a test tomorrow, yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Chris?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about 20 years down the road, what do we have? Do we have now an area where, again, the income levels are low? And why just we're looking at these areas of income, low income, but I'm just wondering if we can mix it up a little bit more, 1. 2, what's the resale on a house of that size after 20, 30 years? Are we doing something short-term that maybe doesn't work out? Are there some other facilities that we might have to put in place in terms of vehicle parking, transportation access, thinking that we're aiming it at a lower income? Is it possible to also do a little bit more of a mixture of different type of housing? I heard you say it might look a little off with just one sitting there and much larger housing either side, but at the same time, I guess I still remember some of the public housing, the one public housing development we had in Pontiac, which started out great. I mean, you had teachers and lawyers and everybody living in that housing development, but over time, it really became a place where, as people with upper mobility moved out, it became the place kind of like the last resort. And it was very concentrated. And I'm just wondering, projecting forward, 20, 25 years, house, the house, I don't know, 700 square feet, that's probably what, 2 levels? About 350 square feet per level?
1 or 2 levels, depending on the proposal. Yep.
1 or 2 levels?
Yep.
But the total would be 700 square feet?
The minimum. Obviously, you
Minimum.
can do more than 700.
Yeah, and just, not just the one house, but looking maybe beyond it, what it means in terms of that whole neighborhood and growth and families and coming in and coming out, stabilizing the area. Certainly, I think it's a good thought in terms of talking about affordable housing, which is a term I've heard thrown about quite a bit. And I think this is a good step toward defining affordable housing. And I'm finding that affordable housing is more than just a structure. I mean, it's a structure, the land, the other infrastructure around it and everything. So I'm still trying to get my mind about how that works out. We have these hard numbers, 700 square feet. Is that some magic number in terms of materials and building and everything, where it maybe goes in some types of increments and you drop back to the minimum of 700 square feet and you get your maximum reduction for the maximum area living space, or just, yeah. Just wondering how that works.
So, couple points I'm going to bring up. First off, just in like fact finding, is that the accessory dwelling units, obviously the property owner has to live there. So that's a key point. But with these residential infill overlay districts, with this potential developer, these would likely be rentals. Now, could they be rent-owned in the future? Absolutely. But these are not meant to be at least what's being proposed is not meant to be low income. It's meant to be affordable. And, really to be able to populate these areas is to reinvigorate and investing in these properties help motivate some of the other properties to invest in their own properties. And so it's to really elevate the neighborhoods as a whole and as a strategy. And we worked with the Carlisle Werban firm, who have done some of the staff reports this year. And, they are experts in planning and zoning law in some jurisdictions that have done things like this. One of the things that they really have made the assessment is that this trade-off of allowing these smaller homes, what we're requiring is going to cost about 10 to 15% more in architectural materials. And so that's it's a smaller house, so the construction costs are going to come down for that. But that trade-off is you're going to have to provide quality materials. And the goal with those quality materials is it's going to last longer. When you have vinyl on a facade, it can warp and just look, 20 years from now, if it's not repaired, replaced, or maintained, it can look really bad. But if you have nicer materials, it's going to be a stronger element to the neighborhood blocks that these are on. So, and looking in 20, 30 years from now, I think our goal is to, we want to look definitely at these strategies. We're not seeing very many single-family homes. There were 37. I'm not sure if it was in the budget year or the calendar year, but we had 37 homes that got building inspection permits last year, and 2/3 of them, I believe, were from Century Homes, who are working in Fieldstone and Stonegate and related places. And so we're not seeing a lot. There's a housing demand, but the costs are not making it feasible to build the traditional 1,200, 1,500 square foot homes in these neighborhoods in Pontiac that are a little closer together. This is not true suburbia here. So this is really an opportunity to bring people into Pontiac, and hopefully that they start to like to live here and invest and potentially may grow out of these units and live elsewhere in the city later on.
Well, one of the things that's in my mind, my daughter was living out in California, Oakland, California. She was doing her postdoc out at Berkeley. And she moved into a garage, basically. It was a garage, and it was affordable. Of course, it didn't have a bathroom. But had a key, you can go in the back door, and she was friendly with the person that was there that was also working over at Berkeley too. So, you know, it was a nice relationship. But we're talking about these facilities and checking off all the other boxes otherwise that would be required for an R1 facility.
Yep.
Okay. And how about, and what do we have in terms of maybe energy, alternate energy conservation, that sort of thing? Any thoughts there? I think there's one development, tiny homes in Detroit. And I think they're also using like big solar panels, grouped solar panels or something for what do you call it? Distributed power generation or something like that. I forget the term. Where you're not relying just on Detroit Edison, but maybe working with Detroit Edison and supplementing, coming back and forth to keep the actual cost of the house down. Yep. And then two, the things that are in the house, since we got that move away from natural gas as much as possible. You know, all these considerations to maybe add to the lower operating cost and more ecologically friendly operation of the house and maintenance of the house.
I can look that up. I mean, I know some communities give bonuses sometimes if you're going above and beyond to be, you know, environmentally friendly or more sustainable in there. I know one of the challenges of, you know, this is more for commercial buildings, but getting LEED certified can be, you know, definitely costly to do. And I think that our goal with this is we wanted to find a path to incentivize development. You know, obviously we don't want to hurt any environmental features of these neighborhoods or of the community as a whole, but I can take a look to see if there's maybe anything we could either recommend or incorporate in to incentivize people to go in that direction.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, people need housing, and you got to keep the costs down, and building materials and workmanship costs money, but at the same time, one wants to have something that can be there and also be friendly, and we turn over something that might be a model and a step forward into the future, maybe even generate other types of housing that might model it larger scale if it's really done right. Okay. Just wondering about that.
I have a quick question. Has any thought been given, I mean, I think if this is proposed and if it's done, it has to be done right. Has there been any thought to doing considering what they did in the 20s? When GM came in here in the 1920s, we had a shortage of housing, and the local politicians and, you know, people in the know wanted to keep GM here. So they came together and literally said, I'll build 4 homes, I'll build 6 homes to keep GM here because there was not enough housing for anybody. What about having almost like Sears kit homes and basically having, hey, this is what's acceptable to us in this district, yep, kind of like sample elevations, things like that?
So one of the things we considered was one is for these 3 areas here, but one is also citywide. And South Bend, Indiana is a community that I'm aware of that actually has a template book that you provide. It actually streamlines the approval process, all that stuff. I think we're very interested. I think the amount of investment we would need to make in time and money to create that is something that we are committed to. We're just not committed to at this time for this project as a whole. We're very interested, and I think are going to continue to find ways to see if that's a possibility, whether it's in focused areas or citywide.
Yeah, so the minimum and maximum square footages, are those livable floor areas, or is that net floor area?
Yep.
Does that count below grade square footage?
Really, it would be livable. It would not include the garage, which is typically not included in that calculation. It would be, if there was a weird situation, something was underground, it would count if it was livable area, but it would include kitchen, it would include the bathroom area, things like that, so.
Okay.
And there is not a maximum, it's just the minimum is 700 for the smaller units. The ADUs have a minimum and max of 400, minimum 1,000 maximum, and then that's 60% of the principal structure, so.
Okay. And then, is the city doing anything to incentivize people to actually utilize this development option, such as like property tax credits or something, like to get people to actually choose to do this rather than a normal development?
Yeah, that's a good question. At this time, no. But I would defer those questions to Deborah Younger, and we're trying to create policy. There's a couple things going on with the city. There's an RFP out for a housing plan, and I think they're looking to be select. I'm not involved in that process, but they're looking to be moving forward with the housing plan process that's going to be taking place concurrently with the master plan process. So that's coming up, but I think part of that is we need to come up with economic development strategies to incentivize, and I think there's been so much that's been worked on with the home repair program and with ARPA and some of our existing policies and projects going on. We're going to be developing that once economic development gets the capacity to get there, so.
Okay.
Cool.
That's all my questions.
Okay.
Speaking of the IRA, I believe there was a program that came out for assisting the installation of more efficient heating units. That was sort of like a bond type of activity. And I'm just sitting here and I was thinking about those kits. And then also coming up with maybe something like heat pumps or something like that, and coming up with a cadre of workers that are familiar with heat pumps, installation, design of them, and if it could also be funded and some of the cost offset, you know, that could really be powerful. But yeah, that's arm waving and talking right now. I'm not sure exactly what it takes to put that together.
It's
but
not a bad
let's
idea, an
think about
informational
it.
session to come up with ideas,
Yeah.
you know, because you never know just saying something out loud if that'll actually spur thoughts in others and you can come together with something. So I can bring that up with Deborah tomorrow.
Yeah, and that could work well with our different schools, our charter schools, all of our high schools. You know, maybe I remember when I was in high school, I took automotives, where I actually would work on the teachers' cars and stuff, you know. And maybe this is something, maybe this is portions of it that's relatively straightforward. What do they call it? Pokio? I think that was the Japanese term for it. I'm not going to say exactly what that is, but straightforward that would give people.
That's an item on a menu at the restaurant.
Yeah, that would give you that would give people a chance to get into that entry level of building and putting together in construction. This is exciting. This could be very exciting. A lot of possibilities.
And I will share that these are not for container homes. There may be some future conversations about, you know, if, when, how, who, where, you know, that sort of thing, but that's not what this proposal is for, so. Okay. If you have any
I
questions.
have one quick question for you.
Sure.
Is this only for vacant lots?
It could be.
There's a house already on the lot, and you could maybe fit this other.
You would, I mean, accessory dwelling unit,
Yeah.
even if you have an existing garage, you can convert it to an ADU with this regulation, but you would need to demolish your home to fit these standards for the smaller 1 and 2 family.
Okay. As you're talking about this, I just would hate for this to become, here's the 1,200 square foot house, here's the 700 square foot house. There are 4 people driving in the 1,200 square foot. There's 3 people driving in the 700 square foot. Where do all these cars go? You know, we're not a public transportation area.
Yeah.
Everyone.
But there are still parking requirements, and so, you know, if you looked at the image, you know, there garages proposed for these. They're not required, but the idea is that there would still be opportunities to store these things off-site. And even if it wasn't this proposal, there are regulations in here about driveways and access and stuff like that.
Okay, good.
That and these are smaller footprints. You have the ability to create a driveway, even with these smaller lots, to be able to fit the car on the lot and off the street.
Because we have a lot of people who like to park on their lawn already with
I know.
one house.
Yep.
So I just
Yep.
would hate to see a proliferation of that.
Yep.
But very exciting. and
Okay.
interesting.
And if I could ask Planning Commission, if you have any thoughts about this, please reach out to me. Give me a call, send me an email between now and next month. As we're putting this together, if there's things that we should consider, I think we'd welcome those before we get publish this for a public hearing. So.
Thank you.
May I throw in one more item?
Sure. What's one other thing?
A few years back, we renovated our house, which was built like 64, and 1964, not 1864, 1964. And one of the tools we used was Google SketchUp. A little simple, straight thing, but it allowed the wife and I, it took us about 2 years of going back and forth on this thing. And we finally got it, and we were able to take those electronic plans and hand them to different contractors, do the costing and everything, and they would use it for the as-builts. And then I looked out my back window and I realized a lot of these houses where I lived at were all built about the same time, between about 1950 to about 1958. I think they called them GI homes and stuff. A lot of them were over in Bloomfield. I said, doggone, I wonder if there could be like a base template that's put together, and then people can just modify that template as a way of expressing and maybe another way of spurring renovation of existing houses that are already there. Maybe there's some typical things like, you get an older house, you pretty much are going to cut out the bathroom, cut out the kitchen, upgrade the electricals, go through, do the windows, hit the roofs. You got to almost do that. And then you get into the little fine things that you want to do to make it look pretty, after a while. So maybe also along with building newer houses, also see how much of the existing housing stock might be open for some type of renovation, combination of contractors and do-it-yourselfers to get that done. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Okay, can we go on to item F? All right.
So we have another zoning text amendment, completely separate bucket. But I just want to share this with you. I'm going to be going a little in depth, a little bit more than the public hearing next month, but I just want to get feedback with on the radar. Some of these things, we don't have an ordinance for this in front of me, so I still need to work with the public firm, and we're still working on some things, but I'm just going to present this to you with their. So there are two items in this bucket. There are really two items. The city has an annual mobile food truck license program that has very little regulations for time, place, and manner of operation outside of like temporary or special, temporary use or special events. The city also desires to clarify between special events and temporary use for public and event organizers to make it easier for applicants. We've had 22 special events in the city. Had a lot more temporary uses, and I think getting a clear line, there's been a lot of coordination. The city is really active and loves events. What happens with that too, right? What we're proposing is that, again, all food trucks must get an annual license. We're just codifying this a little bit more. We are codifying that all food trucks and parts thereof located on or near a fueling station must be a minimum of 35 feet from a fueling pump. This is a fire code regulation. We wanted to put it in our zoning code just for that transparency that those food truck operators knew about it. We also wanted to clarify if a mobile food truck was part of a community event, special event, or temporary use would not be subject to the regulations that we're proposing. The event organizer gets that permit and has to share a list of all the mobile food trucks that are there. So part of this is in different zoning districts, what is permitted. And so I'm going to fly through this. Some of this is repetitive on each of them, but we are as part of this, prohibiting operating on a public street of an R1, R1A, R1B, and R2 zoning district. And we were thinking about pros and cons, and really, while some people may appreciate that, this does not exclude ice cream trucks, which is a little different. This does not exclude ice cream trucks from coming down, but most food trucks, when they're operating, are doing it for a minimum of 4 hours and up to 8 or 10 hours to make the money to operate there. And while I think everyone wouldn't mind a food truck in their neighborhood, there may be some concerns if it's there for a long time. Traffic, noise, smells, things like that. So the food truck, however, may operate in that zoning district in a public park, school, or community center between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. The applicant must get approval from the property owner, and it can get an annual temporary use permit from the planning department to be able to operate. And then we do have, if a private residence where catering is being offered, the event is not open to the general public and patrons are not individually paying for food, it's exempt from this ordinance. Even if it's a food truck coming in, the attendees of a party are just going to get the stuff on a food truck. That's more catering. And so we did not want to make that as part of this regulation. So for R3 and R4 zoning districts, these are the multifamily zoning districts. The property owner, which is most often the apartment complex, can get a temporary use certificate for one mobile food truck at a time, and for up to 6 hours a day. Now, if they wanted to do a temporary event, they could still do that. It's a separate process. But under normal operations, they could get one annual permit. It could be different food trucks each day, but they would just have to let us know what food trucks are coming in, and then just make sure all that licensing is there. For the C0, C1, the commercial zoning districts excluding downtown, the property owner can seek for a zoning certificate for a temporary food truck for up to 10 hours between 10 hours a day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. It's an annual permit, and all food trucks must be licensed from the city. The applicant must provide a sketch plan and adequately account for parking of existing business customers and for customers of the mobile food truck. The mobile food trucks are not permitted within 100 feet of a property of a restaurant unless the restaurant provides written notarized authorization for the mobile food truck to operate. Just to be fair to the restaurants that are there, same licenses, and food trucks are prohibited on sites that are vacant and do not have an active business with a certificate of occupancy. And this is a safety thing, and that's why staff is proposing this. Next, C2 downtown. The two aspects of this. Number one is on private property. Again, they can seek an annual permit. You can do between 8 a.m. and midnight. Provide that same sketch plan accounting for the parking. We have a smaller distance to the mobile food trucks not permitted within 100 feet of a restaurant unless that restaurant provides written notarized authorization. Now, additionally, the city is very, very, very soon going to be having parking for our paid meters. And so I don't know when that's going to occur, but it's going to be very soon. It's been free to park down there for a while, but those machines are getting fixed as we speak. Now, the city is willing to authorize mobile food trucks to be downtown and be in a public parking space. There would be a fee. It's not established as part of the zoning ordinance, but there would be a fee established by the city. And the apparatus, the food truck and all the apparatus must be located in one approved parking space. They can't take up multiple spaces and, impact. And it must not be blocking the flow of traffic, and the customer pickup must be not blocking the flow of traffic. Hours of operation are 8 a.m. to midnight, and the mobile food truck may not install anything in the public sidewalk or private property related to the food truck being parked in the parking space. And we just want to make sure people walking up and down do not have interference. So. And lastly, the industrial districts, the property owner can seek a zoning certificate for temporary use for one, and this is one annual fee for up to 10 hours a day. And sketch plan, and just must be 150 feet from a property or restaurant unless the restaurant provides that written notarized authorization. One other thing that we are proposing and I'm going to call it a food truck parklet. A parklet is not a park, but it's just a small little area that resembles a park. And sometimes it is. Most of the time, parks have trees, but parklets sometimes in big cities sometimes can be just a parking space that they cordon off and do certain things with. But this food truck parklet is a property owner may apply through administrative site plan for a permanent food truck or parklet. It must be located in the C1, C2, or C3 zoning districts. So it's either downtown or it's on a thoroughfare if it has those zoning districts. A permanent curb separation between the food trucks, pedestrians, and vehicles, as well as permanent electrical connections, must be established. Benches and related items for optional consumption on site are required. I'm proposing 1.6 benches for a food truck, just to make sure that there's enough and, to operate there. And while the owner does not need a temporary zoning permit each year, the mobile food vendors must be licensed and inspected through the city. So, this is not something that currently exists. There are some food trucks that go to the same spot all the time, but this is really set up that there could be locations in the city that people come to for some quick food and really create a little bit of atmosphere wherever that's being established. So we wanted to provide that flexibility and go from there. So I believe, and then with the food trucks, if after 2 building, fire, code enforcement or zoning violations in a rolling 12-month period, the mobile food vendor is prohibited from operating in the city for 6 months, starting with a 3rd violation. So we just wanted to ensure that that was there. Temporary uses and exempt events. Temporary uses are really something, they're established for a fixed period of time, generally not appropriate for the zoning district on a long-term or continuous basis. These can include farm stands, sidewalk sales, and smaller commercial-related events that expect less than 200 people, open to the public. These events can be up to 30 days in a calendar year. Days can be consecutive or non-consecutive, but must be established on a zoning permit. In my previous job, I worked with a furniture store. They have a 15-day tent sale every year. That's a perfect example of a temporary use. There are times that church picnics may have something. It's not a community event, but that might be a temporary use. It's a smaller approval process. Planning shares with police and fire, but it just allows them to do that special event on a temporary basis. Private events that are not open to the public are exempt from the zoning ordinance, but are still required to, so this is a little different, are still required to file any applications or notifications to the building department, fire department, and sheriff's office. UWM is a great example of this. They do some events at their site that are for their employees. It's not open to the public. It may look like a county fair, but this just really exempts them because it's really not open to the public and doesn't really fall under the zoning classification. I do want to talk about special events, and really we're establishing a definition. Now, we're still talking internally about how this is going to be organized between the municipal code and the zoning code. But right now, the definition that I have proposed is this is really a larger event than a temporary use and is organized activity open to the public, held on public or private property, specific to an identifiable place occurring for a limited period of time for which the special event permit is issued. These events require review by city administration, fire, police, planning, and building divisions, as well as other relevant departments for approval based on the scale and scope of the event. Qualifications for a special event would be any of the following: more than 2 food trucks or commercial vendors. Alcohol be consumed on a premise. Temporary stages for concerts and performances, multiple entertainment areas or 1 large entertainment area, and more than 200 people expected to attend. So we just wanted to create just a differentiation with that, for everyone to know. So these, again, are just to clarify where we don't really have regulations, and we probably should. A lot of jurisdictions have regulations on food trucks. I don't see this as being limiting with food trucks. I think it's giving them an avenue to safely operate in the city, and we hope it encourages, different uses throughout, accessory and temporary uses throughout the city. So with that, that's all. I'll take any questions.
I think it's great that you have boundaries because it can get out of hand, and the more we have festivals, it will get out of hand. So I like that there are boundaries. So I appreciate that. But I'm looking to hear more as we continue.
Okay.
No questions. I think this is good to lay out some regulation on this, and it doesn't seem like it'll affect the food trucks I love. So
okay.
Not the taste anyway.
I think it's well needed.
Sounds like you really have this one nailed down.
Yeah. We're just going to organize it a little bit between now and next month. Yep.
Right.
Yep. Thank
Good.
you.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Ditto. Thank you. All right, then we are now at the point where we are ready for some commenting. We have one gentleman here. Should we just cut right to you? Let's do that. We'll give you 3 minutes to speak your mind.
I just say I think I appreciate what the planners are doing in trying to be foresightful. I will say I think Commissioner Norcross was hitting the nail on the head what I was thinking. Sometimes we can be short-sighted in trying to deal with issues. You know, our city needs to have families to grow. And sometimes when you scale down, you don't make desirable property for families. So I like the idea of taking those GI homes, which Sue was talking about, and what Northcroft was talking about, and how we can expand those so we can have some options for families to grow. I understand what Mark is saying, how they can possibly look at putting 2 small pieces of property, but at the end of the day, I think we have to be real careful of where we're going with homes when we downsize. Because when you downsize and then there's a shortage of funding, you get multiple people in downsizing, and it creates not a real desirable. Now, I do want everybody to know I live close to M1. There is some impact for being close to M1. There's some impact. It's not always a desirable impact. I appreciate M1 being in our community. So when we're trying to do something around there, we got to really try to be very much enhancing to make it more desirable. And sometimes when you put the elements that's downsizing, it doesn't necessarily be something that's very attractive. But I appreciate what Mark and his staff and them are doing to try to see how we can deal with a lot of these vacant lots, because I know exactly what he's talking about. But it ties right into, can we get aggressive? And I know I'm working close with energy right now, how we can use energy to uplift the homes. And we can. We can take on solar. We can take on heat pumps. We as a city can embrace that, and it's an opportunity for us to look at how we build our communities up in a more positive way. Trying to be short-sighted and saying, hey, what can we do with these small lots, do something small, I'm not quite sure that's what we want to look at for trying to develop our communities. You know, but I appreciate the forethought and what you're doing, Mark, and your staff over there, because that's the kind of thing we need to add to our master plan. So this type of informational sessions, it was very helpful for me to get a better idea of what we're doing. I'm very concerned about this residential and housing issue we have in Pontiac. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Do we want to just go through Vernita? Anything you need to say tonight? All right. Sam?
Nothing.
Nope. Sue? Nothing. Chris? You always have a little something.
Okay. The neighborhood associations of District 1, we're resuming our meeting this Saturday, 1 p.m. at the Kappa House, and our speaker will be Mr. McIntyre of Code Enforcement.
Ooh.
Also, October the 13th, reserve that date. That is the date for the NAACP Freedom Fund Dinner, and I have tickets.
Hooray, hooray. Excellent. Well, I have nothing to say. So we're going to close this little public comment moment, and we're going to go to staff communications. Staff, what's your communication?
No comments from me.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, first thing I wanted to bring up, we did advertise for a public hearing tonight for the zoning map amendment. This is a PDF. I just wanted to kind of show this as reference. I'm going to talk about city council approvals in just a second, but if you remember, Planning Commission recommended approval for 1075 Walton, and we get to the first reading, and Councilman Parker, on the left, is like, haven't we already rezoned this? And I like, I don't see anything in our records. We were able to find some, we don't have any planning records before 2019. I mean, it's insane. And so we're able to capture some PDFs of some minutes we did not have previously. And we actually found where it did get rezoned in 2018. So they didn't even need approval from City Council, and that was withdrawn. Because of that, we've actually found, I think, 15 to 20, and I say 15 to 20, we've got most of 75% of them confirmed that it was approved by City Council. So we've made amendments to that zoning map. The colors are not showing up there, but we have that, and we're ready for that. There's 5 that I still need to find. I see a draft resolution. I don't see a City Council action on. So we're still in like research mode. I'd rather get this thing shored up first before we take it forward. As part of this, though, I did want to introduce to you, in a couple weeks, we're going to be sending an email to Planning Commission, probably to City Council and the public. In advance of the public hearing, we're going to have a zoning map. We've already got the test map that you can click on a parcel, see the zoning district, and so I think it's going to be helpful. The goal of this zoning map is not that anyone's property is getting rezoned. The goal of this is to make sure we have an accurate zoning map that is updated, because our last one that looks like it was published is 2014. And I know Donovan Smith worked really hard previously, but just never felt comfortable, never got what he needed to get that assurance. And so Planning Commission's going to be reviewing it. It really is an opportunity for property owners in the city to let staff know, hey, I think I was approved. Here's proof, or look up during this time frame, just to double check things before it gets adopted. And then City Council will have that same opportunity. So that's it. So I just wanted to share that with you. And then the long-term goal is we'd have a map online, because it makes it so much easier to understand zoning districts, let alone for Planning Commission when we're reviewing applications and rezonings, and understand various zoning districts. So we're still figuring out a few things with cartography, and we've made a few cartographic changes to the colors a little bit. And we're also going to be showing the medical marijuana overlay district on here. We're going to be showing also we've got a little bit of an shaded thing for conditional rezonings. So, and so I think that's going to be helpful for people to move forward. We will have the medical marijuana, if that gets approved, that'll be added to this. And we will have, if the residential infill overlay district goes forward, that will also go on this as well, just so you have a one-stop shop with all these different layers and whatnot. So.
Excellent.
So, I don't know, that's it.
Great, thank you. So that zoning map is rescheduled for public hearing on October 11th?
Yeah, we will, unless something comes out of left field.
Okay.
We've got 23 items that's going between the boards and commissions and council this month. That's how, thank you for sticking for this marathon tonight, but we're working as hard as we can on those things.
We appreciate how hard you're
yeah.
working, which then leads into which leads into the next little item here. Next regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting will be Wednesday, October 11th, which is the same date as that public hearing. It was going to be Wednesday, the 4th of October, but we have staff that's going to be learning more about planning for us. They're going to be off-site for a week, so we had to postpone our meeting by 1 week. So our next Planning Commission meeting is Wednesday, October 11th.
And I just have one more thing, just to update from City Council. They did pass the adoption of the rezoning at 121 Orchard Lake last night, so that'll take place. That'll be officially enacted in 10 days. So.
Oh, the nice place to take good care of there.
We have 5 items for tonight that's on the October meeting. We might have one, I hope it's not as full of an agenda, but we might have one other thing that sneaks in there. But it hopefully will not be as much in October. But I can tell you that we've got other things brewing, and people that have got concepts, so it should be busy. So
is there a thought that maybe we should start at 5:30 rather than 6? Would that make a difference for anybody?
It would for me.
Oh. All right, I guess we're not doing that. Just a thought. Okay, then I would like to propose that we adjourn. Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Steph. Thank you, Carl.